We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Football focus doing. Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football, I like football season, all the things that go with
it. Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson, as always, live here on Monday morning at 7 a.m. Just us and Good Morning Football, talking all the football this morning. You ready to review all the Week 9 action, Sam? You love when I compare us to Good Morning Football.
No comment either way on comparing us to Good Morning Football.
Because we're live.
It was a bit of a clunky intro.
It was a little clunky.
Yeah.
I've done better.
You have.
Can we No, we can't restart that. We're live.
That's how it works, yeah.
Let's have some fun. When I reminded you that Thursday Night Football was the Jets-Colts game, you did give that. You're generally disgusted on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
But you were really disgusted when I reminded you that was a game.
Yeah.
That maybe we should touch on at least briefly.
I
Colts
suggested
beating the Jets.
that maybe it wasn't.
You suggested maybe not.
Maybe it's not a game we should touch on.
Anyway, let's do high level really quick. Week 9. What a crazy week.
Ridiculous week.
The whole 1 o'clock window where, of course, we're always communicating the whole day, and it was just like nothing makes sense here.
Yeah, at one point there were like 8 games going on, and one of them made any shred of sense.
Yeah. It was it was weird. It was weird. So my thought is maybe there's no takeaways.
No.
Let's wrap it up. Throw this one out. You're a big throw it out guy.
See you Wednesday.
We'll see you Wednesday. You guys said we're long-winded. Now we'll get into all this mess, but high level. Here's the deal. We sit here every week. We overreact. We react. We overreact. We crown a new team every single week, but this is fun. It's chaos. There's no clear favorite anymore. There's no dominant team. The Rams looked like maybe this was true, but then the Rams could be that team that establishes themselves as the dominant team. Nope. Stafford back into a pumpkin last night. Back into a pumpkin, throwing pick sixes and almost pick sixes.
That's the MVP you're talking about.
Sorry. But this is fun. I mentioned this on the Daily, I think, last week. This is kind of like that post Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Breeze, elite QB world, maybe, where it's like a little chaotic. I know Brady and Breeze are still there, but they're old.
Breeze is not still there.
Brady and Rodgers are still here.
I mean, he's still there.
I had the name in my head.
He exists. It's just he's no longer playing
Breeze
football.
is not playing. He's on Sunday Night Football. But I meant Rodgers in my head. So
well, that's okay.
I don't know.
Then.
It's chaotic.
Yeah, like it's funny. We and everybody else is out here trying to analyze the game and decipher patterns and tell you what's going to happen and then what did happen, and then you end up with a weekend like this where almost everything that happened bore absolutely no resemblance to reality whatsoever, right? Like, no matter what you're doing, you cannot go into that game and predict anything like the Jacksonville Buffalo performance, right? That was not a spectrum of outcomes that anybody touched on last week, and yet it's obviously in the range of outcomes that can happen on any given NFL Sunday, which is, I think, why this sport is so fascinating, and we all spend our time doing it.
I also love a good 9-6 game. You don't see a whole lot of 9-6 games anymore.
You don't. No.
I mean, it's 6-3 is better, but I love.
Well, we've had this run of scoregami games, in the last few weeks. Games.
This is a throwback, though.
Right. Games that the final result comprises a new score that's never been seen in NFL history. Right. 30-45 or whatever it is.
That was
right?
one.
9-6 is not one of those. 9-6 has happened many, many times in NFL history, but not for a while.
Yeah, usually not in this pass-heavy, score-heavy era. So you mentioned a 45-30 scoregami. That was exactly the score of the Colts-Jets game. I was surprised that was a scoregami. Let's touch on it very, very briefly. The Colts, what I love the most of this, they achieved the Urban Meyer goal.
Yes,
they
250.
The goal. I mean, this is what...
You mocked him.
This is what the Jags offense is aspiring to every single week, and the Colts achieved it with 260 yards on the ground and then 272 passing yards.
You mocked him, and here is proof that Urban was onto something. If you get 250 in the game, you're probably going to stomp the opposition.
You're probably going to score 45. I mean, this was ridiculous. The Colts were averaging 10 yards per attempt at one point, so just horrible by the Jets. Mike White gets hurt. Josh Johnson comes in, throws for 317 off the bench just for fun.
This was like the worst possible scenario for Zach Wilson. Remember, it was like
that's the takeaway on this, right?
Yeah. Like the first game where Mike White came in, where Zach Wilson got hurt. It's like, well, at least Mike White didn't play well, because the worst thing that could happen for Zach Wilson is that he goes out, Mike White comes in, balls, and suddenly it's like, oh, maybe Zach Wilson's the problem here. That didn't happen the first time he played, but then the start was when Mike White got himself 400 yards and looked pretty good.
Right.
He was on his way to looking pretty good in this game, 7 of 11 for 95 yards and a touchdown, then gets himself hurt, seemed to hurt his wrist, got banged while he was throwing a pass, and then he goes out, can't feel his hand or whatever, can't throw the ball. So in comes Josh Johnson, who has one of the most absurd careers in NFL history. If you go back and look at Josh Johnson's college career statistics, they are some of the most ridiculous stats you'll ever see from a quarterback at any level of the game anywhere.
Insane.
His final season at San Diego, it was like 43 touchdowns and 1 interception. And I believe the 1 interception hit his receiver in the hands from memory. I think
back and grade it, man.
I think there were also a couple of turnover-worthy plays that weren't picks, but just for the sake of comedy stats, the 1 interception he threw that final year hit his receiver in the hands. His overall college numbers were 130 combined touchdowns, rushing and passing, for 13 or 15 interceptions or something. Absolute madness. Then he's in the NFL, and he's played for basically every team in the league, plus a team in the United Football League and one in, was it the AAF he was in or the XFL, one of those two leagues. He's been everywhere and just keeps coming back. And eventually goes out there and has his first 300-yard game. He was drafted in 2008, so a decade plus into his career, and looked really good and got really unlucky. Almost brought him back. Almost got himself the 4 touchdowns. If he had one more pick and he was in the shadow of the goal line, or one more touchdown rather, and he was in the shadow of the goal line, if he'd had the 4th touchdown, he would have tied Zach Wilson for the season.
Stop. Come on.
I'm just saying, if you're Zach and you're sitting on the bench and you're looking at this, you're like, okay, Mike White goes out there, looks great. Josh Johnson comes in off the couch, looks great. What's wrong with me?
Briefly, let's talk. That was the one thing I kind of wanted to touch on here. Zach Wilson sitting and watching. And I would say, of all the positions in sports, quarterback is probably the one where you can watch a little bit, right? I mean, you can.
Don't you dare. You just said you couldn't do that. I posed this very question to you last week after Mike White balled out. I was like, do you sit Zach Wilson down and have him learn from the bench? And you were like, no.
I'm saying the silver lining is maybe he could do that. Now, granted, there was a point in Sam Darnold early in his career, the same thing happened, right? Darnold got hurt for 3 or 4 weeks. Josh McCown went in, and we jumped on that narrative too. This is great for Sam Darnold. This is great. He gets to sit here and watch Josh McCown, watch the master go to work, the guy that's been on 18 teams. Now You get Zach Wilson, guy's been on 18 teams. It's Josh Johnson. Get to watch Josh Johnson work. Maybe you can learn a little bit because it's not for Zach Wilson. It's not about the physical ability. It's like, man, this offense really runs when you get the ball out, a second faster per drop back, like these other guys are. There might be something there where he gets to see this thing operate. I'm not suggesting sit him for the rest of the year. I'm suggesting while he's standing on the sideline, looking like the ball boy at 15 years old, that maybe he can pick some stuff up watching this offense run.
The other thing to come out of this game was this the first game the Colts had their starting 5 offensive linemen and they just ran over the Jets' offensive or defensive line like it wasn't there?
I mean, yeah, I just don't like the Jets. The Jets ended up Premium Stats 2.0. You go check out their grades, and you can get 25% off using the promo code NFL Pod. Look at that! Look at that! The promo code pops up. Look at the bottom of the screen.
Not if you're listening, but if you're watching.
If you're watching, 25% off. The promo code is NFL Pod. Nice job. Good touch, Tyler. If you have that and you go check out the Jets' grades, 29.8 as a team, I don't know if I've ever seen that. I just don't know if I've ever seen as much red as I'm seeing from the Jets' defense on Thursday night.
Right, but a big part of that is for the first time this year, the Colts had the 5 starting offensive linemen they anticipated going into the season with.
Yeah, they
Eric
got
Fisher, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Mark Lewinsky, and Braden Smith, right? That's their 5 that they had out for the first time.
Yeah.
Like we've been saying, this is a top 3 offensive line when those guys are healthy, and they hadn't been all season long. If that is a new development for the Colts, they're going to get that 5 for the rest of the year, that's genuinely transformative. That, like Jonathan Taylor, everyone comes out, Jonathan Taylor, incredible game. Yeah, because he was running through like wide open chasms that they were opening for him. Like that, and that'll happen all year long if those guys are healthy.
Yeah, and you get Naheem Hines was making big plays. So anyway, it was a great all-around effort by the Colts, pretty bad by the Jets, and also, not encouraging for your rookie quarterback that wasn't playing, Zach Wilson. So we're going to go through all the games here. Let's go back to yesterday, and we'll go through that 1 o'clock slate. Let's start with this Baltimore win over the Vikings, 34-31. Baltimore pulls it off in overtime. Big shocking surprise here at the end of the game, Sam.
No.
Was not?
This game went exactly the way we said it would go, which is to say the exact way it shouldn't have gone. The Ravens should have won this handily based off everything we knew about both teams going into it. But the other thing we knew about both teams going into it is that the Vikings never play a normal game and play every single team close, regardless of how good they are. So the question was, how are the Vikings going to keep this close? Because we know they will. Well, the way they did it this time was jump out to 14-point lead twice and then throw it all away to the point where they were going to lose by a field goal. This was so predictable that I think while they were a score up, I think they'd already thrown away the double-digit lead. But at least an hour before the end of the game, I texted you and was like, the Vikings, this is the most Vikings game ever. They're up double digits and they're going to lose by a field goal.
Yeah.
And then I thought they'd blown it.
You ended up tweeting this out, right?
Yeah. I thought they'd blown it. I thought when they tied the game late on, and then Baltimore were struggling. I was like, they're not going to lose by a field goal. It's gone by overtime. But no, they just put it to overtime first. But the other interesting thing from this is, remember when Dan Campbell went for 2 at the end of the game to try and win it rather than tie? And it didn't end up working. Was that against the Vikings?
It was against the Ravens.
The Ravens.
Right?
I don't even remember. It's a blur at this point. But either way, they didn't get it, right? The team, they left. There was enough time left on the clock.
No, it was against the Vikings.
Yeah, that the opposition was able to drive down, get a field goal, and win the game, right? But the point is, had they held them, then the Lions would have won the game instead of going to overtime and taking your chances. The Vikings drive down. They'd thrown away the lead. They were now down. They score a touchdown. They're now down by 1. And I don't think it even crossed Mike Zimmer's mind that there was an alternative option to kicking the point and tying up the game and playing for overtime. There was a minute left on the clock, so Baltimore had the chance to drive down and kick a game-winning field goal to stop it going to overtime. But this was the opposite. Like the Dan Campbell one, they went for the points, they got the points, and then couldn't stop the field goal, so it didn't matter. Here, he
did it again.
Yeah, nice. Here, the Vikings didn't go for it, but had they gone for it, they actually held the Ravens, and who didn't get a field goal, and they would have won the game.
So would you have gone for it if you're the Vikings?
I would always go for that.
Really?
Yes. I don't see a downside to not going for it. I mean, other than you lose the game then and there, but like, what's the difference?
I don't think it even crossed Sim's mind. I don't.
Literally. I genuinely don't think it even registered that was an option. It's just, we scored now we tie it up and let's go.
Yeah, it was, other than you predicting the outcome and all that stuff and it feeling obvious from a Vikings perspective, it was a fun back and forth game. You've got Devontae Freeman and Le'Veon Bell, the two-headed monster, combined with Lamar Jackson for 247 yards on the ground from the Ravens. It wasn't, there's some scrambles in there, obviously, as always, but, this was a little old school in the way the Ravens ran the ball. Was it Schlereth? Loving it? Just loving it? Saying, lean on it. Run him. You wear him out. They did. They controlled the ball a ton.
This was a good game for Stink.
This was.
Stink's all about this kind of game.
He was loving it. Give him the Ravens every week. Give him the Ravens because he loves a good run game, loves a good backside pulling guard. Not that they did that. They're outside zone team, in Denver. But either way, he still loves it. But the run game really effective for the Ravens. And, this was another important win for the Ravens as they try to keep pace, with the great Tennessee Titans. The Ravens pull another one off, and it's just funny how much things change in a couple weeks, right? We'll talk about the Bengals in a minute, but it was just 2 weeks ago. The Bengals had a franchise-defining win against the Ravens. And the Ravens, they're holding the course here. It is about consistency week to week. The Bengals were the number 1 seed 2 weeks ago. They're now in last in the AFC North, and the Ravens keep chugging along here.
Yeah, the Ravens are pulling out several kind of critical key wins in situations that were very perilous this season. They've kind of, I don't want to say they've ridden their luck, but they've come up clutch at a few key opportunities over the course of the year. And the Vikings almost the exact opposite. Like when they've been put in this situation, they've typically not pulled it out. And for the Vikings, like you look at the 7th seed in the NFC is going to go to a team that isn't very good. And the Vikings they might have the best sort of track at that 7th seed, but they keep throwing away games like this.
Like as a team, they feel like they should be there, but they're 3-5 now.
Right, that's what I mean.
It's a perilous territory.
You can't lose too many of these games, particularly with their upcoming schedule, and still make that 7th seed.
For the Ravens too, I think as much as I mentioned the run game and all that stuff, but Marquise Brown continues to produce. Rashad Bateman, they have integrated him into the lineup. Devin Duvernay with a ridiculous catch. I know the
Ravens had a few of those. Duvernay had one. Bateman had an insane snag. Like Lamar was off in this game. He did not have a good game at all. Accuracy was all over the place. Didn't look particularly comfortable.
Oh boy, they're gonna come after you.
Like in this
Lamar
game,
fans are coming after you.
In this game, Lamar Jackson's accuracy was not good.
I see 2 big-time throws in there. I believe those were accurate.
Yes. Overall, his accuracy was not good.
I agree. I know.
And yeah, there was a few absolutely ridiculous snags from his receivers to help make things look less bad than they were for him.
Yeah. So again, I think for Baltimore, they score 34. The all-around effort that the offense can bring. This is what they've been moving toward over these last couple of years, is being able to win with the pass game, win with the run game, have more weapons offensively. I think we're starting to see that come to fruition for the Ravens here. So they moved to 6-2. Vikings at 3-5. Anything else you want to add on this game?
No.
Vikings pass D still, they were making it difficult for the most part, but they could not get off the field run game wise. So good game for the Ravens, and another disappointing loss for the Vikings, who do play up or down to whoever they're playing.
Really
Super Bowl contender Ravens, and they're right there in overtime.
It really is kind of amazing how they do that.
It's incredible. NFL fans, you hungry for a big win this week? Well, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, they got you covered. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL game to win, any NFL team to win their game. And if they win, you win $200 in free bets. If Sportsbook isn't available yet in your state, don't shake your head.
Can you get it together over there?
Sorry, I haven't read this before.
Okay.
DraftKings won't leave you empty-handed if the sportsbook's not yet available in your state, Sam. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings daily fantasy sports contests. And DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and you win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win with promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Of course, you must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, and Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, where are we going to go next here for football games? New England 24. Carolina Panthers 6. I did say we should probably somebody pointed out that when you gave the Titans any chance to win, I asked you, the Titans have a chance to win? You gave a hard no. You were way off on that one. You were right on this one. When we were predicting this game, I think I took New England, but you were just like, nope, Sam Darnold, nope.
Yeah.
Nope, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Darnold's very, very bad at
That's actually what happened
at quarterbacking
in this game.
Yeah, it really is.
I got to find this graphic that I just pointed out. It's
16 of 33 for 172 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, one of which was a pick six, and a passer rating of 26 was Sam Darnold. I haven't checked when this was, but there's like one of those sideline clips, and it's Robbie Anderson being extremely pissed off at Sam Darnold generally.
You don't know what he was pissed off at.
No, I'm pretty sure you do. My question, though, is did that happen directly after the pick six, or was that at some other point in the game?
I don't like this whole thing because all the captions said that he was mad at Sam Darnold. We don't know what he was mad at. Projecting.
Well, here's the thing. If it happened after the pick six, Robbie Anderson had to run a long damn way to fall flat in his face and not quite make the tackle on the pick six. If I was Robbie Anderson, that would infuriate me more than simply an errant pass ending up in the hands of defenders. The fact that after that happened, I then had to run 60 yards and ended up with my face in the turf, and they scored anyway. That would make me very upset if I was Robbie Anderson. So if it happened after the pick six, I would sort of say, all right, he's mad at Sam Darnold, but primarily he's mad that he kind of got made to look a little bit stupid by J.C. Jackson, like weaving around and falling on his face. If it happened after one of the other interceptions, then it's more like, no, he's just straight pissed that Sam Darnold is terrible at quarterback.
Either way, I don't like when people put captions on stuff when they really don't know what a guy, unless he's yelling in Sam Darnold's face, which he wasn't. We don't know why he was mad. So it's just frustrated Robbie Anderson on the sideline.
I mean, I'm prepared to speculate at this point.
People are just want those likes, man. Need that dopamine hit. Anyway, Robbie's frustrated. This was a fun stat from SportsCenter, retweeted by Michael Hurley. You got to properly give credit to my friend Michael Hurley from CBS Sports New England, wherever he is right now. Worst point margin in first 4 starts versus opponent. This is since the merger. Andrew Luck minus 116 against the Patriots.
Love a good since the merger stat.
Since the merger, right? And it's not since the 80s. This is since 1970, which was
the merger.
You and I both watched some 1970 2 highlights or something the other day. It was a different football game.
Yes.
Slightly different game. They should probably move this since the merger a little bit closer to reality here, because Joe Namath was not playing the same game of football that they're playing today.
I mean, those stat lines are just absurd.
Either way, yeah, like 5 completions for 228 or whatever.
Like 250 yards.
It's amazing. So this is great. Worst point margin, first 4 starts versus specific opponent. Andrew Luck versus the Patriots. Jeff George versus the 49ers, minus 105. Jeff George versus the Bills. So he's second and third on the list here.
Yep.
Jeff George the Colt and Jeff George the Falcon. And then Sam Darnold, point differential of minus 100 in 4 games against the Patriots. And this backs up exactly what you were saying. He's got 1 touchdown, 9 picks against New England, and that was very much the story of this football game. Carolina not being able to move the ball, and when they did, well, they turned it over.
I'm glad that we finally got closure on the Christian McCaffrey hasn't been in the lineup. So, of course, Sam Darnold doesn't look like the same guy from the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, there's a lot of
McCaffrey was
that.
back in there this week, and he still looked terrible.
Look, there's a lot of that analysis going on. The OBJ stuff, which, by the way, today's PFF NFL Daily, we talk about the Browns. We talk about how the Browns do look better. There is about 4 years of evidence mounting in this OBJ. They're better off without him. Yeah, not saying OBJ is the real, whatever. Browns are better off without him. It's just the evidence is there. They were 3-0 with Christian McCaffrey, and then he left, and all of a sudden things fell apart with the Panthers. That is not evidence. There's actually evidence last year when Christian McCaffrey got hurt that the Panthers' offense was more efficient without him.
That's just like searching for something to disprove what's obvious, right?
Yes.
Sam Darnold is bad. Sam Darnold looked better the first 3 games when they were playing terrible opponents, and then started to look bad as soon as they started facing some better teams. And the people that want Sam Darnold to be good don't want to accept that self-evident truth. So consequently, they're looking for other explanations. And if you're looking for other explanations, you can say, well, Christian McCaffrey wasn't there, so of course the offense is different. I mean, God, how did we not see it before? But now he's back, and that excuse disappears in a vanishing smoke-filled flame, the same way that, Sam Darnold's touchdowns have.
Oof.
Like, it's Sam Darnold. It's not other things. It's not Christian McCaffrey. It's Darnold.
Checking in on Darnold's season grade, we're going to be at 62.6 coming out of this week.
Which is basically where he's always been.
Yeah, 64, 63, 58, 62.6.
Yeah.
So that's
the really tragic thing for Carolina is that they didn't go all in for Sam Darnold, but they did trade a reasonable amount for a guy that was always going to be a huge risk to do exactly this. They then picked up his 5th-year option because you kind of had to at that point. And the backup quarterback is P.J. Walker, who, and let's be fair to him, is probably worse than Sam Darnold. So now what do? Like, Carolina has been making moves as recently as the Gilmore trade to essentially say, no, we're going to be good this year. We're going to be contending. Like, we're a playoff team. And now you suck. And Sam Darnold and PJ are your options at quarterback.
You keep rolling with Sam. You just keep rolling with Sam Darnold.
So you just
he had a decent week last week against the Falcons. Again, one of those his best throws didn't show up in the box score type of deals. This was his bad throws did show up in the box score. No touchdowns, 3 picks, 26 passer rating, 5.2 yards per attempt. Just not good all across the board for Darnold and the Panthers. Is it time in this wide open AFC? Patriots are in the playoff picture now. They're 5-4.
Did you finally look? Did you go and find the play where Mac Jones threw a heel hook onto Brian Burns?
No, I did not go and take a look.
It was
pretty blatant.
It's pretty bad, yeah. Grabbing hold of his ankle is one thing. I mean, it's kind of pointless because there were about 8 other players that were going to make the play anyway. It's not like you were preventing them from recovering it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you had been, I might even endorse that, Okay, that's smart. So grabbing hold of it is one thing, but when he was shucking you off and about to get out of you grabbing his ankle, to then essentially wrap in a full heel hook and take him to the ground felt
instincts.
A little bit.
It's just instincts.
Yeah?
I blame UFC.
Of course.
The kids are growing up.
I mean, look, if there's one thing we know about Mac Jones is that the man is a trained killer.
Yeah.
And you can't take away those instincts.
My thought is if you're going to grab and twist or whatever, I would go full figure 4, right? If you go full figure 4.
That always seemed like a lot of work to sink in, though.
Yeah.
The heel hook is...
when I was in if I ever got into a schoolyard fight or whatever, I would try to break out a good figure 4, a good sharpshooter. It didn't work as well in the schoolyard.
Right. The figure 4 is one of those things where if you watch a bit of UFC, you rarely see the figure 4 sunk in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're trying to go for knee bars. They're trying to go for heel hooks. They're not trying to sink in a full figure 4.
But UFC, they're not doing it right.
Oh.
So what you got to do is it's full Ric Flair figure 4 here. I mean, you grab a leg, you give a woo, you drop the woo, and then you got to get the crowd pumped up, and then,
So that's where they're going wrong in the UFC?
Oh, yeah.
They don't drop the woo before they try and sink it in?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the opponent's just going to lay there and just go, no, don't do it, right? So, I don't know. Mac, he's a rookie. He's got time. He can learn. I think next time you go full Ric Flair figure 4, and nobody's going to take that seriously. He's not trying to hurt him. That's just a pro wrestling move. But you're really, you're jamming it in there, getting the knee.
There's a few guys in the UFC that are specialists, leg lock artists, right?
Yeah.
So, most Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, they're into the chokeholds or all this kind of stuff. There are a few people that are leg lock specialists, and it's always funny because you see they fight in a different way because they're constantly trying to launch themselves at a dude's knees and sink in something ridiculous, right? And everybody sort of treats them as they're a dangerous animal because you're not used to that. So suddenly this dude dives at your ankles and you're ah! Jump out of the way and get the hell away from it, because if that guy sinks it in, you're in trouble. Mac Jones basically went for Brian Burns' ankle like he was a a Brazilian jiu-jitsu like leg lock specialist.
Yeah.
That's essentially what happened on the play.
Mac Jones just continues to prove that he is the best rookie quarterback out there right now. He's got it all.
I mean, Justin Fields wouldn't have done that.
No comment.
I put that out there as merely fact.
I don't think the system has put Justin Fields in position for a leg lock.
For heel hooks?
Yes. You think Matt Nagy's taught him a leg lock? Mac has Bill Belichick in there. He knows all the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me.
So anyway, this is, by the way, I found him. I found him.
Who?
Rob Merkaba he's in the comments on YouTube. He's a Sam Monson stan. He's a Sam stan.
Okay.
He said, I'm the only one. There's your guy.
Only one.
You finally have a fan.
I'll take
It's
one.
awesome. What do you think of the Patriots? Let's get back on track here. Not that wasn't awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited for our discussion this morning here. Patriots are 5-4.
Yeah, but
They are a half game behind the Buffalo Bills for first in the AFC East. Bills are 5-3.
now that is interesting, but nothing has changed for the Patriots in terms of they've essentially beaten the teams that they should have beaten minus, not
The
minus,
Chargers.
but-
The
yeah.
Chargers is the one
With the
game.
the Chargers, that's the way of playing it. The Chargers is the one game that deviates from their pattern of beating bad teams and losing to good teams. The Chargers is like the one game that you can say, okay, that's a team they probably they shouldn't necessarily have beaten just by the fact that they are a better team.
On the other hand, they're a late fumble, week one, late fumble. It's their fault, but they fumbled. But it was a late fumble away from probably beating the Dolphins.
The Dolphins.
But it's still it's a game that they lost that they could have won.
Okay.
A late field goal against the Bucs. I mean, they're a couple plays away from 7-2. I know you can do that with everybody. I'm just saying I think the Patriots are dangerous. The other weird split here is they're 1-4 at home, 4-0 on the road right now. But New England, while everybody, all these top teams, the Bills and the Chiefs, are faltering these last few weeks, all of a sudden the Patriots got a little win streak going, and they're lurking. They're lurking. So just
I mean, the fact that they've closed right up on Buffalo is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Our PFF power rankings have given the Bills like a 90+% chance of winning that division for a while now.
This might be the biggest drop.
Right. All
in
of a sudden,
division odds.
that isn't a guarantee anymore.
So those always update over at pff.com. Yeah, usually late Monday, sometime Monday, I believe, right? Or is it Tuesday?
I think they wait until after Monday.
After Monday.
Night
So those, it's a great way to see division odds and Super Bowl odds and the whole thing. And you can see that over at pff.com. The Bills, that's going to drop drastically. Let's get into that Bills game. The good old 9-6 ball game. Jaguars win 9-6. Look at Urban Meyer. His first win on American soil.
He's going to be so happy.
His first win on American soil.
Yeah. He's going to be so, Urban Meyer after defeat, it's just misery. It's like going through the motions. He's bitter at the world, right? Everybody in the building hates to be around him. It's a nightmare for everybody. Like, he was like that in the preseason. Can you imagine what it's like? It's like 9 weeks into this thing when it's just misery after misery. He's going to be so happy now.
I wouldn't know. I've never had a boss whose mood was dictated by whether or not you won or lost, how things are going.
And or blood sugar level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. But I do know.
I wonder if they've been treating Urban the same way. It's like throwing him a protein bar when he's been in the particularly high peaks of rage.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. Like, if you need something, this is the time to ask.
Oh, the Jags front office staff is buying new chairs. They're like new TVs for the office. Anything you had on the wish list that you haven't
Urban's
been given.
Like, yeah, I get it.
Right, Monday.
We got all the money. Budget means
He's just
nothing.
throwing people the credit card.
He's
being
excited.
like, yeah, whatever you need to get the job done.
But you got to do it before Tuesday.
Yes.
Just in case there's a bad practice there.
Right.
Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, really Wednesday. If there's a bad Wednesday practice, you lose all that.
So going into this game, like certain games, I don't want to make this a specifically ESPN thing, but there's always like a weird storyline that, isn't particularly football relevant, but is like a quirky name or, whatever. And the storyline going into this game was that a Josh Allen, a player with the same name, has never sacked his counterpart in NFL history.
It's a big story.
Josh Allen has never sacked a Josh Allen, like that equivalent. Now, players with the same name have played each other before. Todd Collins played Todd Collins or whatever, but there's never been a sack interaction.
Right.
So going into this game, it was like, if Josh Allen sacks Josh Allen, it will be an NFL first. Now, not only did Josh Allen sack Josh Allen, but Josh Allen also picked off Josh Allen, and Josh Allen recovered a fumble from Josh Allen in addition to tackling Josh Allen in the course of this game. It's like the football gods just went, you know what?
Trifecta.
As fun as the sack would be, why don't we just make this game just the Josh Allen takes down Josh Allen game?
Let's just keep it going.
It was like the other Josh Allen had just been fed up of being the other Josh Allen for like the last couple of years and went, to hell with this. This is the day I reclaim my name.
And those were pretty much the plays that dictated this game.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, look, the Jags defense had been torn to shreds by pretty much everyone. And then they come in, they got pressure a ton. They got a ton of pressure. Something like 40% or so of Josh Allen's dropbacks were under pressure. Josh Allen, the quarterback.
Yes, well done.
Josh Allen, the edge, does get the sack. Probably the most egregious play. So Josh Allen, the quarterback, also 2 interceptions. You mentioned the fumble, but also 3 total turnover-worthy plays. We did have some astute listeners who aren't that astute, just kind of throwing turnovers at us for Josh Allen, how they were down. But he had been playing with fire this season. You had the Texans game where he kept firing at linebackers. This was a little bit of reverting back to correction. What am I looking for here?
I don't know.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Edge rusher Josh Allen has been quietly having like quite an impressive season.
Yes.
He is. And actually, when you look at his career, he's basically gotten better every year.
Which is what he did at Kentucky. He was a late bloomer at Kentucky.
So pass rush grade, 70 as in 2019, 74 in 2020, and right now he's up at 78. He's already got more total pressures than all of last year, admittedly on a similar number of pass rushes, because obviously injuries played a part there. Overall grade, 68, 70, 85.6. So he's getting better year on year, and this season has been pretty decent.
Yeah, the most egregious play, the one where Josh Allen, the edge, really benefited was there's something going around the league where QBs, is it more than ever? They just really feel the need to force it while they're getting hit.
Well, this is like there's a run of this type of quarterback, right? The Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the Carson Wentzes of the world, they're all of a similar style in terms of never say die, make something special happen when it all looks like it's doomed. The problem is there's an obvious downside to those plays, and that's the reason most quarterbacks, that's the reason Peyton Manning never did that, right? Is because in the greater scheme of things over the long haul, that typically didn't work out for quarterbacks, right? And when it didn't, terrible things happened. So Peyton Manning was much more of the opinion that you're better off just chucking those plays away rather than risk the downside of what can happen. Those guys, we've been riding for this wave for a while of the good things that can happen. Look at all these crazy plays Mahomes makes, or look at the stuff that Josh Allen can do. Wentz, it's been, more 50-50. But all of a sudden, it's like we're being reminded why most quarterbacks didn't play that way.
This, it really has all caught up, right? So this, the Josh Allen interception, the quarterback here, when he was getting tackled and he chucks it up to the other Josh Allen, the Jags blitz, and they did a nice job. They got some unblocked pressure on Josh Allen. Like they won some one-on-ones up front, the Jags, and they also created some unblocked pressure. That battle up front was a big reason why the Jaguars won. But this particular play, if Allen recognizes it quicker, he's got, I believe it's Devin Singletary coming out of the backfield, wide open underneath for probably a 10-yard gain. And it's 3rd and 12, right? And it's 3rd and 12. It's the third quarter. It's 6-6. Buffalo. This is what Buffalo did last week, by the way. What was it? 3-3 for a while against Miami. Yeah. And then they kind of came out of it late. The Bills did not come out of it late in this particular game. But Josh Allen, this is the times when the Bradys and Breezes of the world, they just dump it off and get rid of it, right? And for all the spectacular plays, like you said, you run into this one where it's like, let me try to juke this rusher. Let me try to do too much. And he's getting spun down, tackled to the ground. Josh Allen, the edge, comes from the other side of the field. He doesn't even have to go that far because Josh Allen, the quarterback, kind of throws it right to him.
Yeah.
Just an egregious turnover. But I think this wasn't the only play that did it. But these are the decisions Allen's got to get better at.
This is a great example of a game that just made no damn sense, right? Like I'm
trying to make sense of it over here.
I know,
but you're right. You summed it up.
In in retrospect, you can go back and you can point to certain things that happened in this game, and we're like, oh yeah, Josh Allen, the quarterback, is responsible here, and they could have gotten better here, and all these kind of things. But in reality, this was the NFL. Like this was the epitome of on any given Sunday, any team in this league can beat any other team in this league for no freaking reason whatsoever, other than like sometimes sense just has to go out the window in order to make something magical happen. And that's what had to happen here. In order for Josh Allen to beat Josh Allen, we needed to see some logic disappear out the window. And that's what happened here. Logic vanished so that Josh Allen could both sack, intercept, tackle, and recover a fumble from Josh Allen.
I can't believe it. It's incredible. I mean, the internet went nuts just on the sack, and then you got an interception and the fumble recovery.
Yeah, because Red Zone or whatever had been bigging it up as a possibility heading into the game. It's like, if Josh Allen sacks Josh Allen, it'll be the first time that's ever happened in NFL history. And then you just kept doing other things to Josh Allen as well and racking up yet more ridiculous.
The fumble's just as egregious. It's just a keeper for Allen, and he didn't even read it right. I mean, the defender's right there, and he runs right into him. It's 3rd and 2, and that's in the fourth quarter. I mean, the turnovers were the biggest story for the Bills. The best quarterback in this game, and probably of the week, C.J. Beathard. I mean, the dude makes 2 throws, hits the I don't want to call it a cover 2 shot because he kind of lobbed it up, and it kind of got there in the cover 2 hole. But he had the throw of the week. Just rolling to his right, chucks it back, deep crosser, dropped in the end zone. Well, it was the best throw of the entire week. So again, if you sample size be damned here, if you go use your premium stats when this game comes through,
you'll see facts.
Yeah.
C.J. Beathard number 1, Tom Brady number 2.
Yeah, Beathard's the best quarterback in the NFL this season, and he just confirmed it.
I mean, look,
yesterday.
C.J. Beathard has a big time throw rate of 33% and a turnover-worthy play rate of 0.
Yet? Is this game officially live?
Yeah,
it is. So the data is live. It's there. Promo code is NFL Pod for 25% off. You guys still awake in there?
Also 16 and a half.
Look at it. There it is. 25% off. And you can go to, you get your PFF Elite package, you go to Premium Stats, and you go check out CJ Beathard, probably the NFL MVP.
Look at you, all Tony Romoing over there. Can we get production to put up the graphic down here so I can, talk over it?
This might be a 4-hour show. You have a general disdain. Disdain, is that strong?
Yeah.
For Romo?
It's strong.
Okay. I take that back. Some things that Tony Romo does annoy you.
A little bit.
Yeah. The most recent thing
I never
is
bought
him
in
talking to the booth.
I never bought into the shtick of just predicting the play. Everyone was like, this is amazing. I mean, is it? He's just a lot of them were wrong. It's not that amazing. It's also not really what I'm tuning in to hear a color commentator do. Guess the play. I can do that myself. I don't need somebody else sitting there in the booth doing it.
Especially as an NFL quarterback, it's like, they dropped the safety down here. We're going to run here. Some pretty.
So that wore thin pretty quickly to me.
But what are you annoyed at right now? What I just
did.
But
now he's taken to essentially directing the show, right? Hey, roll up these replays. Pause it here. Let me. Now, Jim, go to break. There's a dude There's a guy that does that typically in your ear, and most importantly, not with a live mic broadcasting it to other humans who are tuning in to listen to you break down the game.
That's what a quarterback does, though. He directs
just
traffic.
Takes over.
He gets to the line of scrimmage. He sets the protection. Audibles the route concept. Whatever he needs to do. Uh-huh. That's what Romo's used to.
Give me a keep to leap.
So should I stop talking to our guys and directing?
Do we want to do? I'm not going to tell you how to do your job.
Anyway, Bills fall 9-6 to the Jags.
Josh Allen fell to Josh Allen, literally.
Yes. The Josh Allen Jaguar wins. We also had a David Long versus David Long game.
But they're both the other David Long. Neither one of them is the David Long.
I gotcha. So Josh Allen established dominance in this game for the Jaguars, the edge, who is breaking out this season. Can we just get let me fake excitement here. The Texans and the Dolphins.
I have never had so many people tweet at me than when it was announced that Tua would miss this game and Jacoby Brissett would be playing, and I was going to get my Tyrod Taylor versus Jacoby Brissett game.
Yes, there are certain things that happen. So the Dolphins win 17-9. There are certain things that happen that make you feel like wow, we're reaching people. Like, people are actually listening, right? Every now and again, something happens on the field, and people are like, "Oh, look at this! You called this, or you said it." So this was like your moment for you, right? When Tua goes down with a finger injury. Just like what, 2 hours before the game? Like, this was.
I mean, he didn't he was he was ruled out 2 hours. It was not like he injured it 2 hours.
Yeah, but when did the injury start?
I think he's been dealing with it for a while, and they just
couldn't
decided,
go today.
Yeah, done.
The injury proneness of Tua.
Oh, by the way, one more thing we need to mention about the Jags-Bills game. The other thing at play there, not only was fate conspiring to make the Josh Allen thing happen, but that is the latest example of the Manning cast curse.
Oh yeah,
every single player that has appeared on the Manning cast has lost the following week.
This isn't just like 3 players. This
is like
is
8 or something at this point. Yeah,
like it's
since
making
week 1.
It's making Madden blush.
Yeah. So
Madden took 8 years.
So of course Josh Allen was going to lose. The quarterback in Josh Allen. Anyway, back to this game.
Now back to this game. So It's announced that Jacoby Brissett. So if you guys were listening to the preview show, we didn't spend much time talking about this game. We're probably not going to spend much time talking about it right now. But you were lamenting the fact that it wasn't Jacoby Brissett versus Tyrod Taylor, 2 of your just favorite guys to watch.
Mm-hmm. This was one where the idea of what this game was going to be in my head was better than the reality of what this game ended up being. You know what I mean? Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby Brissett, it's like, yeah, this is going to be fun. And it kind of wasn't.
I got to say the opposite because this went about as expected for me. I'm not a Tyrod stan. I'm not a Jacoby Brissett
every
stan.
Now and again, Tyrod does these kinds of things where you're like, you're a pretty good quarterback most of the time, and then randomly you just throw the ball to a dude when you're going out of bounds and it stays in. What are you doing?
That was amazing.
He just
shovel.
It was one of those ones,
pass.
you know, when a guy is running out of bounds and he's a yard behind the line of scrimmage. You're like, why don't they just toss it forward to stop taking the 1 yard loss of a sack, right? He did that. Only he forgot to throw it off the field and threw it in bounds to a linebacker who had already run off the field and had enough time with this ridiculous floating looped thing to get back on the field, reestablish his feet in bounds, catch the ball, and was like, interception.
It was brutal.
It was bad. So that was the Tyrod that turned up in this game, at which point you're like, all right, now the only thing to watch is Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby, you know that thing of nothing good happens after 2 a.m.?
Yes.
With Jacoby, it's nothing good happens after 4 seconds in the play.
Oh, yeah.
And yet the problem with that is he seems to spend most of his time trying to get the play beyond 4 seconds. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To the inevitable conclusion of bad things happening. I came to the conclusion this game that Jacoby Brissett is a human Wilhelm scream. You know what that is?
I don't.
So the Wilhelm scream, yes, you'll have heard the Wilhelm scream.
Okay.
The Wilhelm scream is this famous, cliched sound effect that is used in hundreds of movies.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can hear it.
Yes, you'll know it. It's in every movie you can think of. It's when a dude dies, it's the Wilhelm scream. It happened in some movie back in the 60s or whatever, and then it became a Hollywood in joke. But essentially, any significant death, maiming, shooting, injury of any kind in Hollywood in the last 50 years has been accompanied by the Wilhelm scream. So my point is essentially, that's Jacoby Brissett in human quarterbacking form. It's usually funny, glorious, the best part of the movie, but it's inevitable tragedy. You know what I mean? And it's still fun to watch, but it's just at some point, make a good thing happen.
This is why you love watching him, huh?
Yeah, because it's kind of funny. But it is it's pointless. You know what I mean? At some point you want a payoff at the end of this. It's as fun as this is, we can't just have endless death. There's got to be rebirth to this, or at least some kind of positivity.
Anytime I can get Ben Stockwell onto the show, I try to do it. He's an astute listener.
Astute listener?
Yeah, loves listening.
It doesn't sound like Ben.
No, because he corrects us all the time. He's pretty astute.
I don't think that means him astute. That just makes us pretty bad at our jobs.
That's also possible. Ben's attention to detail is incredible. I've mentioned before, he is the...
Did you lose a bet or something? What is...
No, I'm just saying, there are people behind the scenes at PFF that don't always get the recognition. Ben is one of the great football minds of our time. Is he not?
This is quite effusive.
I'm just trying to set up because he summed up the game for me, and I'm going to read his one-sentence summary, and I'm trying to set the stage for who Ben Stockwell is for the people who don't know.
Okay.
He developed the PFF grading system.
He did.
So direct all hate to PFF _Ben, not me.
It's
not Sam. People they're always, oh, Steve graded this guy. No, it's not me. It's Ben. It's Ben's system. He developed this whole thing. Blame him.
Should really give out his email address.
We should.
Maybe even his postal address. You could send him,
You could probably figure out his email address. He's in the Hall of Fame. Do with that what you want.
It's like 4 people understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well,
none of them listen to the podcast.
Well, Neil can email him now at his real address because he knows. Anyway, Ben says, both teams knew that the other sucked. Threw cover 0 and other blitzes at each other all day. They were correct that each other sucked, and one team had to not lose.
Yeah.
That's the game. Dolphins win 17-9 over the Texans.
Great. Next.
Yes. Beautiful. Where are we going here? Cleveland, 41. Bengals, 16.
This is all kinds of takes now.
PFF NFL Daily. We did cover. Hey, Cleveland's better. They're officially better. This is it. Seal the deal. We're not going to overreact here to one game. This is 3.5 years of evidence here. 18, 19. Yeah. 3.5 years. Baker's been in the league. 3.5 years of evidence. They're better without OBJ. So we talked about it on the PFF NFL Daily today. Huge win for the Cleveland Browns. Disappointment for the Cincinnati Bengals. Discuss.
The Baker being better without OBJ thing at this point, I don't think is arguable. The question is why, right? Like for a while, there was definitely an argument about whether or not that was true, particularly heading into this year, because as we discussed at length, you could basically throw out almost all of last season for various different reasons. So we didn't know if that was actually, there was definitely evidence pointing in that direction, but you could throw out a lot of it or explain it away or argue it or whatever. Now it's just obvious. But we don't know why. The Browns have kind of put out this idea that, hey, look, all these plays where Odell is open, he's not necessarily open at the right spot or the right time for the ball to arrive. This is a timing offense, and we need the receiver to be where he's supposed to be at a given point in the play, and that's where the breakdown is. There's probably an element of, look, this is their side of the story, and the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. And I think that's ultimately why it hasn't worked, because the point is both things are true. Odell is open when the ball should be coming his way, and there's also plenty of plays where he's open at the wrong time in the wrong place. And for some reason, just the chemistry of the two hasn't worked, right? Like baking is supposed to be a very exact science, and if you screw up the ratios of the things, you end up with something dramatically different than the cake that was supposed to come out of the oven.
It's the Browns' offense.
Yeah, like the ingredients are all there. They're the same things that are supposed to produce this lovely cake, and instead they produce this like brick of doughy ugliness. That's what's happened to Cleveland. And eventually they've decided that enough is enough. Let's just not try and do this again. It's just not going to work. Get rid of him. And all of a sudden Baker goes back to being a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah.
So for them, it's massively encouraging, because if they can get that down the stretch, they're still in contention in their division and in the playoffs, and they could still make noise again because their defense is good and their rushing attack is good and their offensive line is good. Like, the problem was this passing malaise when Baker and Odell were trying to connect.
Baker with an 89.8 grade, by far his best of the season. The thing that looked different is just he was throwing on time. I mean, look, we talked about it on the daily as well. Every offense has elements of timing and rhythm. There are a few offenses that are like, oh yeah, go do whatever you want. And this isn't to suggest that OBJ was just like doing his own thing and ad-libbing and not being a part of the offense and all that stuff. But what I see with Baker Mayfield is him throwing on time, throwing accurately in this game. The Njoku pass, he throws a seam route to Njoku for a touchdown. If you guys have Game Pass and you have the All-22 and all that stuff, go back and watch that play. I don't know if they showed a good replay or not. He threw that ball so early. And I think the biggest complaint with Baker Mayfield over the few years is similar to the Aaron Rodgers thing. It's similar to Mahomes. He doesn't always throw on time. He doesn't always throw with anticipation. And not that he's incapable, not that Rodgers or Mahomes isn't. There's just certain times they give up open throws to go, play sandlot football. And all of a sudden, like, Baker threw this pass incredibly early to Njoku. and puts it just in a perfect spot, a yard or two into the end zone. It was incredible. And to me, it's like that's the difference in this Browns offense. Baker, his back foot hits, and he's getting rid of the ball far more often when there's no OBJ there. Even the Donovan Peoples-Jones, he hits the deep post. I mean, it was like hits the top of his drop, puts it up, and he gets it. It's also Donovan Peoples-Jones getting to be that deep target because he is legit size, speed. He is a legitimate downfield threat, and he's proven that the last 2 years.
And there's a real chance that he breaks out in a meaningful way without Odell Beckham in the lineup. Donovan Peoples-Jones this season has an insane yards per reception figure, but a terrible yards per route run figure. So essentially, he's been on the field a ton, barely gets thrown the ball, but when he does, it's a huge play. And you have to ask yourself, how many realistic targets would he have gotten if Odell Beckham hadn't been there? Not just getting targets, but also making the offense bogged down because of whatever happens when Odell and Baker are in the game at the same time. Take Odell out of the lineup, and all of a sudden, Peoples-Jones, A, moves one peg higher up on the depth chart, and therefore the target distribution. But B, the offense is just more efficient, and the ball is probably going his way more as a matter of course. So he could have a legitimate breakout. The other thing that came out of this game is that the Bengals have been riding this Jamar Chase thing in terms of how many of their games this season have been determined by Jamar Chase making an incredible big play.
Yeah.
That swung all the way back with a vengeance in this game. Not only did he not make the big plays, but the Browns DBs were making plays on the plays where he was typically making big plays. Deep shot to Jamar Chase. Greg Newsome covers him tight all the way, ends up breaking it up. I think was it Denzel Ward had a pass breakup on a deep shot to him, or one of the other corners did. Denzel Ward obviously has the 99-yard, 100-yard pick six on a target intended for Jamar Chase. Chase fumbled one time. Everything that could possibly go wrong on a pass intended for Jamar Chase went wrong in this game. And when that happens, it's obviously a completely different Bengals offense.
Yeah, that was. You're right. I mean, there were many games. Was it a few weeks ago too? They only had a handful of first downs, but it didn't matter. Jamar Chase took 83 yards. It was that Ravens game, right?
The Ravens game. Yeah, it was a couple of plays.
It's kind of the opposite. So the other part of this, the Cleveland thing, is they had a bunch of guys with just one or two catches. By the way, it's not like Baker Mayfield just straight dominated this game, and that's the reason why they won. They had a 70-yard touchdown from Nick Chubb. They had the pick six from Denzel Ward. The Cleveland passing attack didn't have to do a whole lot. Cleveland is better, it seems, when they're spreading the ball around, and whoever the star is in that week is the star. With the Bengals, they have been very Jamar Chase heavy, and to your point, I think that did catch up in this particular game. You also saw the offensive line. The guards got beat up a little bit. I mean, it was ugly at times as far as the pass rush goes. I think my other takeaway here is Cleveland's defense. For the first time, and I don't know if we're gonna draw a line in the sand and say this was the week, but Cleveland's defense, maybe for the first time this year, really looked like what we thought they could be coming into the season. The players that we thought could be good that they added this offseason, whether it was John Johnson making plays, Denzel Ward, as you mentioned, with the pick six making plays, Greg Newsome had a couple pass breakups in there, 3 pass breakups actually. And then, the pass rush was kind of hit or miss, but was this the first time the Browns defense, particularly the secondary, stepping up and playing football the way we thought they could? And is this a turning point for the Cleveland defense because they had so many new pieces this offseason, and now we're in week 9, and maybe they're going to be better going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while for John Johnson to have the kind of impact we thought he should have. But Denzel Ward has missed some time this season, and their other corners have therefore had a lot of exposure to game time. And they've mostly played really well. And I think that's probably a good thing for this defense overall. Now you get Denzel Ward back. Greedy Williams left this game after a few snaps injured, but Greedy Williams has played really well this season when he's been on the field. Greg Newsome as well has played well. Troy Hill has been effective. So all of a sudden, you've got 4 corners that can legitimately play and do good things for your defense, in addition to a guy like John Johnson. A.J. Green, who's their 5th corner, made a few plays. Continuing, by the way, the week of the other namesake showing up, the cornerback A.J. Green having himself a couple of big plays. So, yeah, all of a sudden, the Browns have got like 4 or 5 corners that can contribute. John Johnson at safety. They have a legitimate secondary. They're still going to get JOK back. He's coming back, right? Like
I think so. He's supposed to.
So you have a lot of players in the back 7 that can be effective in the pass game.
The Joe Burrow interception, that first one to Denzel Ward, that was poor. It is. This happened a bunch this week. Just quarterbacks leaving out routes inside. You get the Denzel Ward one. Tannehill had one for the Titans. Who else was I just watching again today? I mean, there was a bunch that those outbreaking routes where corners seemed to sit on it. The Browns were just on pretty much everything that the Bengals had. That were doing.
I mean, Burrow had a couple. It was the pick 6. It was also the one that got like batted in the air, but that was a pass that was left behind the receiver that had to take a deflection before it was turned.
Right, that was behind the receiver. Was that Chase too? Was reaching behind him on that particular pass.
Yeah,
Burrow was just off. I don't think he was a disaster in this game. He made other nice throws as well, but he was just off a little bit more than he had been in the past. So to me, it was just this is the Browns team that we had talked about all offseason, right? This is one of the best rosters in the NFL. They can win different ways. They can win with the run game. They can win with defense. And now Baker Mayfield playing in rhythm and playing effectively. So maybe this is dangerous Cleveland going forward.
Yeah.
Just quickly, 2 weeks ago, the Bengals were the number 1 seed in the AFC. If the playoffs had started 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, even less. Like
our friends in Cincinnati would have loved that if the playoffs had started.
Whatever, like just before that Sunday, it would have been, right? Like eight days ago, the Bengals were the number 1 seed.
Yeah. Now they're last in the AFC North.
Yeah. Whereas conversely, the Browns have gone from being last in the AFC North to suddenly right back in contention.
Right back in the thick of it. And we'll get the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight. Seeing if they can keep pace in the competitive AFC North. Let's go. Here's one of the bigger surprises of the weekend. Denver 30 to Dallas. Will they end up 16? But this was, it was 30-0. This is a beatdown by the Denver Broncos. 10-point underdogs, and they were up 30-0.
Yeah.
Into the fourth quarter. They traded Von Miller this week.
Oh, and that's your thing?
This is just the trend right now, right? You trade OBJ, you got no Von Miller, you got no Derrick Henry. You just lose all these star players, and then teams are better. Less is more. The Ewing theory, as Bill Simmons liked to establish years ago. You lose your star, everybody else steps up, and they're better. So, but people are gonna say, "Oh, Von Miller was holding Denver back."
Yeah.
This was unexpected. Very impressive win by Denver.
This is one of the makes no sense games. Like this had no relevance to what's happened in the last few weeks whatsoever. There's just absolutely no connection. Denver had been struggling even on defense, where we were saying, we kind of saw the offensive regression coming after the first few weeks. We were like, Denver's defense does look legit, for real. They might hang in there even when this regression hits the offense. No, they'd fallen off a cliff as well. Weren't getting pressure on anybody. The back end wasn't holding up either. They were getting wrecked. And Dallas, conversely, had been flying even when they had to go to a backup quarterback with no Dak. The offense still looked good because those receivers and the offensive line is great. Just there's no way this game should have gone this way. And yet it wasn't even close. Denver was just dominating on offense. Trevon Diggs getting beaten instead of getting interceptions.
He didn't get to salvage his grade with an interception in this one.
Dallas's offense couldn't get anything done. It took until 4 minutes left in the game before they put up any points at all.
Yeah.
Bizarre result.
Trevon Diggs got beaten pretty badly. 3 catches for 64 yards. Had another penalty in there. Had a nice pass breakup. Did he have 1 penalty or 2? Lost the penalty. 2 penalties in there for Diggs. You just can't keep up with Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick was owning him. Tim Patrick is a free agent, by the way. We're putting our free agent rankings together. They're going to be over at PFF.com. Tim Patrick will be in the top 50 because the 6'5" dude just wins, man. He can move for 6'5", wins down the field on a nice touchdown. Teddy hit him in stride. It was a beautiful throw. But Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, just making plays.
This is the game which explains why Trevon Diggs is not Defensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. He had 4 targets, gave up 3 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown and a passer rating of 156.3. And on top of that, he had 2 coverage penalties.
Yeah.
And unless you're going to get an interception, like, that's not good. Like, even if you got an interception, there would be a debate as to whether that's a net win or a loss, right? Like, where's the line between giving up stuff in coverage and being able to offset it with a crucial turnover, which changes everything, right? I'm not sure anybody's correctly answered that yet, like where that line is, because obviously it's a fluid thing based off exactly how much you give up, where those plays are, all those kinds of things. But wherever it is, if you don't get the pick, now all you're bringing is the bad stuff.
And on top of that, here's what we need to explain too. Coverage stats, coverage results, whether it's PFF doing it, whether it's Next Gen Stats doing it, if you're charting all of that stuff, it is one of the most inconsistent things in football. And it just is. Like, if you're looking at production stats for coverage players, it's inconsistent because it's quarterback dependent. So it's quarterback dependent on, like if Teddy's got to hit Tim Patrick in stride for that beautiful throw to have a 30-yard touchdown or whatever it was. But also for Trevon Diggs to have 7 interceptions, he made some great plays out of those 7. But you need a Leonard Fournette drop. You need Jalen Hurts to leave one inside on an out route. Look, I mean, you're just dependent on bad quarterback play as well for interceptions. So that's kind of like the Diggs story. Chances are he wasn't going to finish the season with 17 interceptions. He probably wasn't going to get 1 per game. So at some point, the bigger sample size is those other 5 targets per game, those other 7 targets per game. And that's just kind of catching up a little bit. I mean, that's not the complete reason.
No, obviously. I mean, there were 30-0 down late in the game.
The other weird thing that happened in this game, if you said, how did the offensive line play for the Cowboys? And if you're a Cowboys fan, you would say atrocious. Everything was terrible. The reality of the situation was Terrence Steele, he moved from right tackle to left tackle. He was the one who really, really struggled. And it was a factor. I mean, there were a lot of plays where Dak was either under pressure, or Dak also did a lot of that, like vacating backwards through the pocket, and it made it look like the left tackle's giving it up. But everybody else along the line, Connor Williams, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, and Lyle Collins, all kind of graded well from a pass protection standpoint. This was one of those games where it was like Terrence Steele was an issue at left tackle, and that was the issue. I don't know if that was the reason why the offense was so bad, but it probably felt worse just because it was just one guy, not the entire line, that let them down.
I do wonder if there's like game theory now to how you should shuffle an offensive line when guys get injured, because it seems more and more that teams are doing weird things in terms of asking like which player to move. Because obviously, like, the problem is you have your starting 5 offensive linemen, someone goes down, and depending on who it is, kind of dictates like where the problem arises and which player you should put in there. So the Dallas Cowboys, they haven't had Lyle Collins for a while because he got suspended for how would you phrase that? Questionable dealings with the guy that tests him.
Bribery?
I would not say such a term on
blackmail,
live air.
Is that a false accusation?
I mean, look, Steve Palazzolo has said these words: "I want no part of describing what Lyle Collins did, other than to say that it was an unusual interaction with the man that tests him for drugs."
He's just trying to ensure that his urine didn't get to the testing place.
So anyway, while he's been out of the lineup, Terrence Steele has come in, who has a history of not being particularly good, but has actually been playing really quite well at right tackle, right?
History of not playing good.
So then Lyle Collins comes back, and you're like, well, I don't want to take Steele out of the lineup. He's actually been playing well. Plus, we're not that inclined to reward Lyle Collins for what he's done. So we're kind of sort of sitting here with this extra lineman. And they've been talking about, does he start at left guard? Like, do we put him in for Connor Williams and try and get him on the field that way? So anyway, you then have Tyron Smith go down, and now you have this hole at left tackle. So do you take Terrence Steele, who has a fairly extensive history of not being a great NFL player, but has been playing well at right tackle, and flip him to the left side of the line? Or do you take Lyle Collins, the guy that's been the odd man out for the last couple of weeks, who you've been trying to get on the field in any old position, and say, you're playing left tackle in this game? If it was me, that's the move I'd have made. Like, leave the guy that's playing well where he's playing well and not mess with that. and see what happens with La'el Collins at left tackle. They went the other route. They put La'el Collins back at right tackle, who played well, but Terrence Steele was a disaster at left tackle. And it was one of those disasters that was like bad enough that it can completely change the game. Now, again, wasn't the whole reason, but you add that to Diggs, to all the other things that went wrong, and it certainly didn't help.
Wouldn't you have said the same thing, though? Like, Collins has been the right tackle there for a few years. He hasn't been the left tackle for a while. He played left tackle at LSU.
Right. And the two differences are, one, he did play left tackle at LSU and was a high-ranked prospect.
Like 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
But it was a high-ranked prospect when he was doing that. Three, in fact, reasons. Two, he hasn't been playing, right? It's not like you're unwiring everything that this guy's been in a rhythm over the last 6 weeks or whatever. The guy who's been on the shelf for a while, hasn't got the game action. And three, he has a much higher baseline of regular play than Terrence Steele does. So those three things together, I would put him at left tackle rather than Steele.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think guys can make the switch over time, but in those small samples where you need immediate production, you do probably want to not move guys as much as possible going forward, as far as the game theory goes on the offensive line.
And Steele was a college right tackle, so he doesn't even have like the history of, playing well at left tackle at a high level at any point in his life. Right? His final season, he's a right tackle in college. His only good play in the NFL is at right tackle. He's playing well right now at right tackle. Don't move him. Leave him there. La'el Collins, it's definitely not a sure thing. It's like, again, it's playing the percentages, right? Which one has a better chance of being a decent left tackle thrown in there with a week's notice? My money would be on La'el Collins. Theirs wasn't.
The one thing I caught, remember when Baker Mayfield had Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard as his tackles? And even when they weren't giving up pressure, you just knew that he knew that those were his tackles. Oh, yeah. You knew that he knew that Greg Robinson was his left tackle.
Yeah.
I did get the feeling that Dak knew Tyron Smith wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
He knew that Terrence Steele was the left tackle. He knew in part because he was getting hit from that side.
Right.
He also knew in part when there wasn't pressure and just was not feeling comfortable. It was also another one of those games too. And as much we analyze every single play, it's like, how do you explain this? Sometimes the quarterback makes bad plays. Sometimes when he makes a good play, it gets dropped. And sometimes it feels like offenses just go through those things. I think the Chiefs are going through it. Other teams are going through it. The Rams went through it last night. That was Dallas too. Dak had some open throws that were missed, open throws that were dropped when he did hit it. I mean, that was the Dallas offense in this particular game. And look, Cooper Rush is undefeated. Dak's not. So
it did feel like in this game, when you're just kind of looking up and things are going terribly, their offense can't get anything going. You're like, don't worry. When they get Dak Prescott back, the offense will be back where it's supposed to be. It was like last year when they didn't have Dak and it was Andy Dalton and, Ben DiNucci and whatever. It's like when Dak's back in the lineup, this offense will look different. But he was there, and it was bad anyway.
As much as we talk about Terrence Steele and what he gave up, well, Jonathan Cooper, the 7th-round rookie out of Ohio State, just continuing this run of Ohio State, incredible defensive lineman here in the NFL. Jonathan Cooper with an 80 grade in this game, 7 pressures, a couple sacks, really stepped up, career-high 56 snaps. So he had a great game. Again, all these stats and grades, PFF.com. Use the promo code NFLPOD for 25% off. But Cooper with a huge game, as he has to be one of the guys that steps up with Von Miller moving on. So impressive for the Broncos.
Yeah.
They were an afterthought for us, right? We just figured they started 3-0, they're going to taper off. Now they're back to 5-4, and that's in the middle of the AFC West run here.
Bounce back game for Teddy Bridgewater. Had some really nice throws, like the bomb to Tim Patrick over Trayvon Diggs was a really nice throw. It doesn't look like he's capable of doing it for a full season, but like if Teddy Bridgewater plays at that level, that is good enough for Denver to win some games.
Also, I know we can get fired for this, right? We've got limits for how many times we can mention running back. That's in our contract. We can't mention running backs, especially positive things about running backs. We have a limit. But now that Derrick Henry's hurt, we can probably take some of the Derrick Henry love and spread it around to other running backs. So I'm going to give it to Javonte Williams.
He was really good.
Yeah, the rookie running back. 7 missed tackles forced on his 17 carries and 64 yards after contact, almost 4 yards after contact per rush. He was tough to tackle at UNC. And the two-headed monster of Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, they've had some moments this year, but Javonte was really good yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Melvin Gordon was pretty good as well.
He was.
He had 80 yards on his own, 50 after contact. By the way, we got official resolution of the fact that Cris still listens. He texted us and told us.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. So we're an hour and 15 into the show. Like, we were talking about that pretty late. I think Cris... Yeah. It might take him the week to get through our Monday review show, but he gets through it.
I'm just saying we don't need to test it anymore by getting deeper and deeper into the show and more out there. We know.
Cris can fire us for a lot of different things, but he wouldn't fire us for talking about running backs. That wasn't directed toward him. That was just, other edicts.
No, he'll fire us for other reasons.
Yeah, there's other reasons. But he's listening. So, yeah, we're going to best behavior going forward here. We won't call out the boss for anything or do any of that stuff. Anyway, impressive win for the Denver Broncos. Where are we going next in the 1 o'clock slate here? We're almost through it. Atlanta Falcons 27, New Orleans Saints 25. Man, the Falcons really wanted to give this game away. They really, really wanted to. They were playing. Falcons were playing a really good ball game early on. I mean, they were the Saints. I sound like an old man. Good ball game, Saints defense.
You're pretty old.
Saints defense had been playing really well, making life difficult for opposing quarterbacks. Matt Ryan, though, was picking them apart thanks to wide receiver 1, Cordero Patterson. Every time I tried he's not really a one. He can't get off press, and his corners are in his hip pocket, and all of a sudden, Cordero Patterson breaks out. This is the Falcons' offense, though, man.
Yeah.
Patterson and Pitts.
But the thing is, they have tapped into this idea of using Patterson in particular. He's become the hybrid player that I've been talking about for 2 years at this point. That if you just get this guy and make him a genuine positionless player, and he has enough talent to get by at the receiver part of this, you have something special. And the Falcons are doing this on back-to-back plays. They will shift him out, and all of a sudden he's playing wide receiver against a linebacker or a safety. And that, Patterson has limitations as a wide receiver 1. If you play him as a true X wide receiver, and teams treat him as a true X wide receiver, it won't necessarily go that well. But if they don't treat him as a true X wide receiver and they throw a linebacker out there or a safety, then it's just stealing. He has the ability to beat those guys doing whatever he wants, particularly if all you're asking him to do is a relatively Spartan route tree. So if you just say, hey, go deep, it's a fade against a linebacker, I mean, that's just cheating. That's too easy. And then the next play, you can keep the defense in the exact same personnel group and you can shift them into the backfield. Or, if they decide to learn from that mistake and go, oh, we can't have that happen, let's sub out and let's play him with an extra DB, all of a sudden you can put him in the backfield and now you're playing against a light box. The Falcons have tapped into this idea of how to make Patterson into a cheat code on offense to make the defense wrong every single snap, just by personnel. And if that wasn't enough, now you have Kyle Pitts out there basically playing supersized wide receiver, and you don't have anyone that can cover him doing that either.
Yeah, I love it. Look, the run game didn't work in this particular game, but what you're describing too is if you're going to have run game success, if you're going to run the ball, you want to be good, you want to be efficient doing it, you're stealing a player in the box. You're creating a little bit more efficiency by taking a guy that is viewed as a wide receiver, putting him in the backfield. You're creating mismatches, just like you're creating mismatches with a running back on a linebacker, whatever it might be in the pass game.
And Kyle Pitts is now such a weapon as that number 1 wide receiver that he's drawing people like Marshawn Lattimore as the one-on-one coverage. Lattimore was covering Kyle Pitts as much as anybody in this game, and Kyle Pitts, got him for one big play, but that's having an effect, right? If you are drawing the coverage of a guy like Marshawn Lattimore as a specific thing to take away your threat, that's opening things up for everybody else on that offense. And guys like Russell Gage or Cordero Patterson are able to have beneficial looks because they're not drawing guys like that.
Trevor Siemian actually played decent. I thought the ball location was off on some stuff, even some of the drops, some key drops there by the Saints receivers.
He was getting hosed by those guys.
But he led the comeback. He led the comeback charge. Are you surprised? So when they announced Trevor Siemian as the starter, Taysom Hill did come back from the concussion. Yeah. He did play through 2 passes and moved around, did the whole thing. I really thought Peyton was going to put us on. Siemian starting, and he would just take the first snap, and then it would be Taysom Hill's game. But it's not. It wasn't.
Right.
Were you surprised? I was surprised by that.
I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I think Sean Payton, I think all the way along, actually, he has taken the opinion that a standard quarterback plus Taysom Hill is a greater net level than Taysom Hill minus Taysom Hill. You know what I mean? Like Taysom Hill at quarterback minus Taysom Hill as offensive weapon is less than having him there as that, particularly with the group of receivers that the Saints have. So I think that's part of the reason that Jameis won the job in the first place, and I think that's the reason that Trevor Siemian is starting at quarterback, is because Peyton does actually value what Taysom Hill brings to the offense as a broader threat, and he can't do that if he's also the starting quarterback.
Then we need to start talking about Taysom Hill's contract as an issue. And it's not
start talking about it?
It's not $144 million.
Right. But it's like $12 million a year.
Yeah. He's got a cap number of $7 million this year. It's an $8 million in a void deal next year. I mean, then we have to start talking about an H-back.
Yeah.
Making all that money. A backup tight end.
An H-back that can throw some passes.
Then it's a horrible contract.
Of course it's a horrible contract. Was that ever in dispute?
No, because if he was the quarterback that Sean Payton convinced us he could be, or even just whatever he was like if he was the quarterback he was last year, which was he comes in, has a few good games, they could run an offense with him and the whole thing. I mean, then that's not bad for $7 or $8 million a year.
He does also give you some like contingency and backup as a quarterback. I mean, there's value in that.
Yeah,
but probably not $12 million a year, but
right, we actually debated him versus Jameis Winston before the season. And I agreed, let's go with I said, let's go with Jameis Winston. I think at some point you said go with Taysom Hill. Fine. There's a good debate there. There should not be a good debate between Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian if Taysom Hill is a reasonable backup.
The value in his capability as a backup quarterback is the emergency in game where two guys go down. Or one guy goes down because you've already lost Jameis. But like if Sean Payton has time to work, it feels like he will always put a quarterback out there and have Taysom Hill as the contingency who brings something to the offense. But it feels like, in game, like if Trevor Siemian goes down, there's nobody else. If you didn't have Taysom Hill, you would have to burn a roster spot on another quarterback, whereas now you can just carry that guy. So there's some value in that. I agree that it's a ridiculous contract for a guy that like essentially is somebody's pet project at this point. But that would be the argument, is that he is an H-back who can throw and provides like a backup quarterback emergency option that other guys don't, or we'd have to carry another quarterback on the roster, and that would have its own associated costs.
Falcons moved to 4-4. They're sucking me back in here, Sam. I took him this week, right? Did I take him this week?
I think so, yeah.
We should go back through our picks.
That's your job. You're the one tracking this stuff.
I'm supposed to go back. They suckered me back in this week. I thought it was like 6 points for the Saints with either Siemian or Taysom Hill. Coming off a game where I thought the Saints had some things go in their favor against the Bucs, and then they also cracked down defensively and made some nice plays. But division games, weird stuff happens, and Matt Ryan looked really good, and Cordero is you just can't stop him.
Yeah,
just can't stop him offensively. AJ Terrell had a huge game for the Falcons, 3 pass breakups. They've been slowly getting a little bit better defensively, Atlanta. Slowly getting a little bit better.
James Vaughters played 30 snaps, had a really high grade. That guy for him to still be in the NFL is pretty impressive.
There's a lot of
an undrafted player in 2015 who was like one of the first years. Was that year 1 of PFF college grades?
2014, yeah.
So he was like a Stanford edge rusher who graded really well, but was athletically marginal, should we say? And you look at him and you're like, he's probably not going to be a particularly useful NFL player. And it's one of these guys that's like bounced around every preseason, shows up for somebody playing a ton of snaps. Because there's a group of guys that you need to eat up preseason snaps. Yeah. Because if you're not going to play your starters, at some point somebody has to be on the field.
Right.
And it's guys like James Vaughters, where you're like, you need to play. So
roster
this
fillers.
So this guy doesn't have to play more than 8 snaps in this game. You need to play 40. So he plays a ton every preseason, up and down, has like 350 career snaps in the regular season. 30 of which came in this game.
Yeah, like he had strip sack, and that was pretty much it. I mean, the Falcons didn't have much of a pass rush. That's a big part of why the Saints were
Couple of defensive stops in there. I'm just saying, James is out there, plugging away still.
With Dante Fowler out, the Falcons don't have the best on paper looking group of edge rushers with Ogundeji and
with him there, they
Stephen
don't have the
Means,
best look.
Vaughters, Brandon Copeland. I mean, that's not the best look of edge rushers there, but Vaughters makes some plays. Impressive. Anyway, Falcons moved to 4-4, and as I said, so the Saints fall to 5-3. If they were going to make this run, I mean, that last playoff spot we're talking about here in the NFC, you mentioned the Vikings could have been in the mix. The Vikings are at 3-5, the Saints are 5-3, the Falcons are 4-4. Falcons could be in the mix here if they go on a little run.
Yeah,
they're in the playoff picture
all of a sudden. Yeah.
Especially if Matt Ryan plays a clean brand of football here.
Ryan playing well and having those two players that are genuinely challenging to match up with is huge for them. Like, whatever about how good their overall talent is, they can bring two players to the table every single week that defenses are going to struggle to deal with because they're just different from everybody else. Like, nobody else has either player that's like that.
It's true. Go Falcons. They're coming back, baby. Giants Raiders, 23-16. Giants win.
Another game that made no damn sense.
Yeah. Well, look, we were talking about everything that the Raiders had to deal with this week. So this made a little sense. If you go back to what you said, I know it was a long time ago, on Thursday, you said if this was the game where the emotional stuff catches up to the Raiders. They had done a nice job with the Gruden firing and all that stuff. They'd bounced back from that. The Ruggs issue and off-field and whatever. Derek Carr he played his worst game of the year. He was the one. He left the out route inside for a pick six by Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney was just one of the best players of the entire week. Pick six in the slot. He also had the other interception of Derek Carr while playing free safety. That was a good flash of what he did at Alabama. McKinney, as this, he played that star role, that nickel star and free safety hybrid. Great job by McKinney in this game. And that was the difference in the game. It wasn't like the Giants were incredible offensively. They got the 7 from the pick six. Both offenses scored 16. And, just not the best game for Carr, and Giants pulled the upset.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there was a degree to which you could potentially see a letdown coming for the Raiders, given everything they've been through. On the other hand, like, the Giants won a game in which Daniel Jones passed for like 110 yards and had a fumble in there as well, right? Like a bad fumble.
Yeah. Of those 110, 30-yard, nice pass to Evan Ingram for the 30-yard touchdown early. But other than that, I mean, you're averaging 2 or 3 yards per drop back after that.
Yeah, I mean, it was another weird game that didn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, that's about it. That's how I wanted the show to go, right?
Weird game, didn't make sense. Next.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So this will pose the question here with the speedster out, Ruggs, and now reported that the Raiders have signed Deshaun Jackson to replace Ruggs, essentially. I mean, that's Ruggs was going to be a Deshaun Jackson type. Like, that was his comp. They've now replaced Ruggs with the actual Deshaun Jackson, an older version, of course.
The actual Deshaun Jackson.
But, the thing that I kept complimenting of Derek Carr was he's more aggressive, right? He's throwing the ball down the field. The Raiders have induced it out of him, however you want to describe that, by having some speed receivers out there. And Deshaun Jackson could bring that to this offense.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that happened with the Rams, right? They lose Deshaun Jackson. They can't move the ball.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's just a big on-off splits, addition by subtraction, subtraction by addition. It's a big week for all that stuff.
Derek Carr had been playing like fantastically this year. He was, I think, our second team All-Pro quarterback. Tom Brady was the first in our mid-ish season All-Pro. But like in this game, he was just bad everywhere. Like, kept clean, bad, under pressure, bad, not blitz, bad, blitz, bad. Like, everywhere you look, this was the game where it was like, everything just came down around him. He'd been carrying this entire offense. He'd been doing like incredibly well in terms of like things he was saying in the media. I think he came across very well after the Ruggs thing, after the Gruden thing. Okay, you can pick apart some of the things he was saying, but I mean, I think ultimately he came out of that looking very good as a leader, as a guy to rally around. But this did have the feeling of a game where it's just like, and completely understandably, like he just wasn't at this one.
Yeah. I mean, the other part of it too is Carr's probably not the second best quarterback in the league.
Sure.
So there was probably some regression to be had there anyway, but it just hit hard in the turnover-worthy plays, and one that ended up in a pick six. And so they were both. I mean, a pick six is always untimely, but
right.
It was an untimely. They had a chance to make that comeback.
The Deshaun Jackson thing is potentially really important for this offense because in this game he had 3 deep shots, completed none of them except to the opposition, and even that 3 attempts represents a 6.5% like deep shot rate, which is like half what he's been at for the rest of the year. Now again, maybe that was just this game. But on the other hand, if you look at that and you say, okay, suddenly we don't have our deep threat and we half the amount of shots he's taken deep down the field, and of the ones he took, none of them were good.
His average depth of target was 6.4.
Which is old Derek Carr again.
Which is old Derek Carr. Now, he was at 5.4 2 weeks ago, but that was against the Eagles. That doesn't count.
Right.
Because everybody throws the ball that short against the Eagles and completes 90% of their passes, like Carr did. So that one doesn't count. But this one does count because he had had those games where he was up over 9 and 10 and 11 in a couple games. So it was just you didn't have, as you said, those downfield shots in a game where you couldn't move the ball all that effectively.
It's not necessarily, causation, but you can definitely look at this and say, okay, in the first game without this guy on the team, these things have happened, and that's exactly what you would expect to happen if you took him out. Therefore, we need to make this move pretty quickly.
Pretty nice job overall by the Giants defense. Maybe back to feisty territory.
Feisty?
Yeah, maybe not though. Raiders fall to 5-3. Again, the AFC West is wide open here, with Raiders at 5-3. Where'd the Chargers move to? We'll talk about the Chargers in a minute with the Eagles. But they're at 5-3, so they're both tied atop, and then you got 2 5-4 teams, the Chiefs and the Broncos. How's this thing going to shake out in the AFC West? Well, let's go through the other AFC West games. We'll get into it. Let's go Packers-Chiefs.
Okay.
Chiefs 13-7. That's the real final, huh?
Yeah.
Chiefs 13-7.
The narrative of if the Chiefs just stop turning the ball over, all is well with the offense. Well, they stopped turning the ball over, and all was not well with the offense.
No, it was another painful effort.
They had 237 net yards on offense.
Yeah.
Which is almost 70 fewer than the Green Bay offense led by Jordan Love.
Yeah, I mean, there's garbage time in there, but man.
Their average yards per play was 3.8.
And you would say, now it felt like Mahomes is just throwing all the underneath stuff and everything. His average depth of target ended up pretty high with 10.2. But again, I don't know how you put numbers to this other than Mahomes isn't playing great. When he does make a good throw, it gets dropped. And then when you have the deep shot, this happened both of the last 2 weeks. He had Tyreek Hill 2 weeks ago at Monday Night Football. He had Tyreek Hill open. Yesterday, maybe he had a step, but he just overthrows the deep shot, right? So it's like everything that they're doing is just not working, and it's either the quarterback. Mahomes' accuracy is way off compared to where it's been. Again, joking about that Arizona game in the preseason where he missed 5 out of 7 throws. Some of that inaccuracy is showing up in the season. Then he got away with another turnover-worthy play in this game. Then you have, remember it was the pass to Travis Kelce beyond the sticks, and Kelce's like, put it on my front shoulder, but he hit him in the back hip. He hit him in the back hip on an out route. Should have been caught, but it's easier to catch when he comes out of the break and it's right on his hands in front. Not a difficult throw. Everything's just off for the Chiefs offense. That's it.
Yeah.
The best thing they do is run block.
Yes.
It's the best thing the Chiefs do right now offensively.
Which is unfortunate since they don't really want to run the ball.
No. But another really good run blocking effort. Trey Smith was good again. You've got Creed Humphrey, Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown has played well. Again, we're doing our free agent rankings here. Orlando Brown's a top 50 free agent. Other than when he has to face Myles Garrett, which when he was with the Ravens was twice a year. He already got that game out of the way unless they see him in the playoffs, right? As long as Orlando Brown doesn't have to play Myles Garrett, he's been good. He's been good in pass protection. He's a good run blocker and the whole thing. Like, the line is fine for the Chiefs.
It really is.
And that's the bigger story. They have their 2 highest pass blocking grades of the season the last 2 weeks.
It's funny
against
that
the Giants and the Packers.
The last 2 weeks, so the Chiefs at one point, they were below 500, right?
They were 3-4.
Right, so they were below 500. It's like, okay, now it's time to hit the panic button. Since then, they've gone 2-0 and have worsened the crisis. Like, they've won their last 2 games, and we feel worse about the Chiefs now than we did when they were 3-4. That's how bad their offense has looked over the last couple of weeks. Like, I think there is a very real problem with Mahomes as a style of quarterback, and not just him, but Josh Allen, Zach Wilson, quarterbacks that play the game the way those guys do. When everything is going great, it goes great, and you're like, this is amazing. This is you cannot defend this, right? Because how are you supposed to stop this, right? What do you do? This was literally the narrative. How are you supposed to defend Patrick Mahomes? Because if you keep him in the pocket, he carves you up. If you get pressure on him, the way you normally defeat quarterbacks, he just makes you pay for it anyway. If you blitz him, he carves you up. Like, there's literally no way to stop Patrick Mahomes. That's when things are going well. When things start to go badly, now every single thing that made him impossible to defend is a step 1 of things not to do as a quarterback, right? So how do you rein that in? Like, how do you go, we need to wind back the Patrick Mahomes of Patrick Mahomes to get him out of the bad habits that are starting to make problems worse? Because everything that he does now is making this funk that they're in worse. The dropping beyond the pocket stuff, the causing pressure, the trying to make plays happen just outside of structure, like running away to nowhere. Like, these are all things that are typically bad for a quarterback, but Mahomes has always lived in. Now, when it's not going well, what do you attack? What do you change to work it back? And I think the same thing is true with Zach Wilson, right? What makes him such an intriguing and enticing prospect is all of that stuff. But his problem right now is you're just not doing the basics. Like, you're not dropping back, hitting your 5th step, and firing the ball out the way Mike White is. So all of the things you can do, it's kind of irrelevant because we don't ever reach the point where it's possible. Like, you're not executing the offense to the point where that's a value add. It's just your game, and your game isn't helpful right now. And, Josh Allen is trying to fight his way out of plays and firing the ball directly to Josh Allen. But when this is your problem,
said that with a straight face. It was great.
When things are going badly, I don't know how you fix that, because that's what made the dude so good in the first place. And I think that's very different to quarterbacks that played the game more conventionally, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Where you can see very quickly when they start skewing in a weird direction, right? And you can here's our problem. We just fix that.
There was a better balance previously, right?
Of course.
There was a better balance with him playing within structure and out of structure. Like I've said
but the point is, how do you wind it back and say, no, you got to stop doing the stuff that makes you special?
I still think it comes down to a third playmaker. And I'm not saying Sammy Watkins wasn't the best wide receiver in the world. And yeah, there were some games where Sammy Watkins took over. Week 1, it was 2019, it was 3 touchdowns and takes a little hitch route, 70 yards and all that stuff. And the Super Bowl, playoff Sammy. But it's still having that third option, right? So you have Tyreek Hill. I mean,
sign OBJ is what I'm hearing.
They might today. By the time are there any OBJ news? By the time you're hearing this, they might grab OBJ. Get him ad-libbing with Patrick Mahomes ad-libbing. By the way, it was vintage Mahomes to seal the deal. That would have gotten really interesting. So it's 13-7, 3rd and 7 or whatever it is. Mahomes rolls out. Great play. Did he find Tyreek?
Yeah.
Was it Tyreek? For the conversion.
And it wasn't just vintage Mahomes, but vintage Mahomes to Tyreek, right?
Yes.
I've seen somebody go, well, of course they made that play. The defender fell down. It's he fell down because it was the 4th cut Tyreek Hill made on the play, trying to find space for Mahomes to go somewhere with the ball. He went out, up, and it was the 4th up was when the DB just span around, fell over.
Which, by the way, was Tyreek's 4th catch. It was his long catch, 13 yards, on 11 targets. I mean, this is part of the issue, right? So if Tyreek Hill is once again averaging less than 10 yards per catch, the most explosive big play threat in the NFL, Travis Kelce got his, 68 yards. He got in the end zone on that easy touchdown at the goal line. But there's nothing else beyond those guys. There's nothing else beyond them. I mean, that is a big part of the issue. The Josh Gordon experiment, he's had one target, didn't catch the ball. It's just all really, really difficult right now for the Chiefs. It is a legitimate slump. And I mentioned this somewhere too, because we talk a lot, I don't remember where. The old way that the Chiefs offense worked is if Mahomes put up a grade in the 60s, which happened, sometimes that's what quarterbacks do. He'd put up a grade in the 60s, but he'd be like, oh, he threw for 315, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and the offense was still good. And they did it despite Mahomes not playing his best game. Got away with a turnover-worthy play here and there, had a couple tap passes for touchdowns. They schemed it up. They screened it. They did all this stuff. All of that stuff is off. So it's a slump from the play caller standpoint. We always give credit to Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, so we give blame to Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. It's off from their standpoint. You don't have the same explosive plays from Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and you don't have the same elite play from Patrick Mahomes.
So Patrick Mahomes, outside of the pocket.
Here we go.
First 3 years as a starter. PFF grade of 93.3. Big time throw rate of 9.6%. Turnover-worthy play rate of 2.8%. So essentially, incredible. Insane numbers, things you're not supposed to be able to do. This year, outside of the pocket, PFF grade of 65.8. So like 30 points lower. Big time throw rate, 2.7%. Basically, they don't exist. Turnover-worthy play rate, 3.7%. Like, Mahomes has not been the same guy outside of structure. And if anything, he's skewing more outside of structure, like as a percentage of what he's doing. So I just think you end up in this very weird situation where I don't know how you wind that back.
Say that last part again, because I think that's the key.
That he's skewing more outside of structure.
Yeah.
So he already has more plays outside of the pocket, more dropbacks than he did in 2019.
Wow.
Now he's lower than 2020 and 2018, but obviously has half season essentially still to play.
You started this by saying the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes types of quarterbacks. This was Aaron Rodgers as well. I guess my question is, how did Mahomes play elite football for 3 years? Like, it's just catching up right now? How is it just catching up right now?
I don't think it's just catching up, but I think once things go badly, you're now in a problematic rut.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that I don't think necessarily that anything is dramatically different and, that it's just catching up with him now. But the point is, once it starts to go south, you're in a very weird spot because you don't know what to fix.
So I always use the Aaron Rodgers history of his play, right? And I always pull out the exact seasons where Aaron Rodgers had it all going together, right? It was the inside the pocket, it was outside the pocket, it was special throws, it was never putting the ball in harm's way. 2011, 2014, 2016 after he said, hey, don't worry about it. Last year, 2020. So there were like 4 times where Aaron Rodgers looks like the best quarterback you've ever seen. And I know his stats are great historically and they're up there, whatever. So he's great overall. But there are other bouts in there where he's not playing 90-plus football. He has a 75 grade in 2015, a 79 in 2017, an 83 in 2000. It's just odd years. Aaron Rodgers doesn't play well.
Okay.
Even years, he's great. He's like the old Giants. Except he's the old Giants. They always win in even years. The San Francisco Giants, that is.
Oh.
Remember they won 2010, 12, and 14?
Of course. Who could forget?
After they released me.
Yeah.
They won 3 World Series, in 5 years. But when it was going south, it's like, hello, receiver who's wide open. I don't want to throw it to you right now. I'm going to scramble over here and make a play. And everything, the timing was off, and it's like, it was just off. Maybe there's elements of that to it. That we're getting. Like, it's like, is Mahomes going to be an elite quarterback over time? Yes. Is he going to ever grade above 90 again? Sure. Like, he'll get there. But right now, everything's just off, and the timing's off, and he's in a slump.
But I think because of the way he plays the game, I think it makes it very hard to make small changes that would affect the way he plays. Like, if a guy if a random conventional pocket passer suddenly starts to do some things that are slightly weird, you can very quickly see what it is, right? It's like if a perfect golf swing develops a weird hitch somewhere in the motion, you can see immediately where it is and say, okay, here's what you're doing. You're doing this, right? If you have like a Jim Furyk out there with his weird, like loopy-ass golf swing, when that develops a weird hitch in it, like how do you tell? You know what I mean?
Look.
That's Mahomes. It's like if you're going to play like this, I can't tell what's wrong when it's not going well because it shouldn't look like this in the first place. But we've all just kind of stepped back and gone, that's just Mahomes. Like you just let him go because look at it. It's incredible. He's breaking the league.
Good work.
But when it stops working, okay, so what do I do? Like my machine that I don't understand has ceased to function any further. Like how do I fix it? You know what I mean? That's basically the problem here.
You telling me slinging Sammy Baugh, Patrick Mahomes, that comparison's out the window. It's now Jim Furyk.
I'm just saying, if you don't understand the mechanism for how it's working in the first place, how do you fix it when it stops working?
It's really good. If Aaron Rodgers had played this game and the Chiefs scored 13, I have a feeling the Packers would have scored at least 14.
At least 14.
Yes. That's my takeaway from this game.
It does feel like they would have won comfortably if they had Rodgers, not Jordan Love, at quarterback.
Yeah, so this ends up becoming, as we expected, a huge game in the race for the number one seed in the NFC, with the Packers falling to 7-2. The Cowboys also, got their second loss. The Cardinals, who we'll talk about, stick with one loss, and the Rams got their second loss. So 3 NFC teams all get their second loss. The Bucs are sitting at home on their bye, and now Arizona's in control. Of the number one seed.
We need to talk a little bit about Jordan Love,
and let's get to the Jordan Love stuff. Let's not overreact. When did he find out he's starting? Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Which day was that?
He had most of the week.
Okay. Yeah. Go.
I'm just, if you were of the opinion that, hey, we get this great glimpse of Jordan Love, and we said heading into that game that, hey, the Chiefs defense is kind of garbage. Other than the fact that it's Arrowhead and will be noisy. And by the way, it was sufficiently noisy in Green Bay's favor that they had to ask the crowd to shut the hell up while the Chiefs were on offense. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of Packers fans there as well. But, other than the fact that there was crowd noise to be dealing with, it was a pretty good defense to be getting a first start against. And there was a good chance that Jordan Love could come out of this game looking pretty good. That didn't really happen. And if you were, what I think the thing that his performance did in this game to me was really highlight just how good Aaron Rodgers is. And not just because, he would have played better, but the number of times where there's something open, but it's a chemistry hookup between Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, one-on-one coverage, back shoulder throw on the sideline. Those are just robotic between Rodgers and Adams at this point. It's too easy. It's stealing. It's taking candy from a baby, all those kinds of things. When Jordan Love is the guy throwing the ball, it's not the same. And it's just off. It's not Jordan Love and Davante Adams don't have that connection yet. Now, it doesn't mean they can't get there.
They didn't even practice together this week. How could you?
Sure, but
how could you have that connection?
I mean,
Rodgers and Adams have been playing 7-8 years together.
There's a degree to which it's chemistry. There's also a degree to which he's running a back shoulder throw. You don't throw the ball 2.5 yards inside him towards where the corner is.
That's you got to make eye contact. You got to know what the
That's not a timing thing. That's just that's a bad throw. The point is, it showed you how much that connection is important with Rodgers and Adams and how much that offense is actually kind of riding on the fact that they can do that anytime you throw him a blitz or anytime he's in
I agree with
single coverage and all those kinds of things.
That is a good offense, right? We talk a lot about the Browns and they're scheming it up and protecting Baker. You want to have that, and the Packers do a lot of that with LaFleur. But then there's other times where it's Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, hey, just go play football, be better than the other guys and beat them. That's what separates the Packers offense. The thing I would push back on a little bit is I don't like general analysis that's well, this defense is bad, therefore you're going to be okay. Of all the defenses that you're going to play, do you really want Jordan Love going up against Spags? So the Chiefs defense isn't good this year.
Yeah.
But they blitz the crap out of Jordan Love. 22 blitzes, and it's zero blitzes. It's the same stuff.
But why is that a bad thing?
Because it's of the places where a quarterback who just found out he's going to start a couple days ago and has never played in the NFL, of all the places where he probably should struggle, it's against The blitz, knowing where the overload pressure is coming from, knowing where the unblocked pressures are coming from. Plus, maybe I just have low expectations because I had low expectations for Jordan Love and he shouldn't have been a first rounder. Perhaps that's the case.
Yeah.
But maybe this wasn't, it's a bad Chiefs defense. Great time for Jordan Love to start. It's against a dude that's coming. You would have been much better off starting against the Eagles, who are going to let you complete 80% of your passes.
I mean, sure, they're also a bad defense.
Underneath. But it's a different style. I'm just saying the style of the Chiefs defense in Jordan Love. How many dropbacks did he have? 22 times blitzed out of 34, 35, whatever it is. A few more than that. I mean, they blitzed him over 50% of the time. They just attacked. And Love did not have any answers there.
No.
If you were a Jordan Love believer or a hopeful that after the season, when Aaron Rodgers is likely gone or whatever happens, my bigger issue, we figured we'd see some turnover-worthy plays. There were 3 of them in there. They weren't like egregious ones. They were just like you kind of gave the defender a better shot than the receiver. There wasn't a Stafford one in there.
No.
Even though he did try. He did throw one when he was in the grasp and actually completed it. To me, it was just the accuracy. He was just missing throws by a mile.
Yeah, I mean, accuracy and just like not a great feel for where you should be going with the ball, I think, a lot of the time. They weren't like horrendous misreads, but it wasn't like you didn't have the sense that he had a tremendous grasp of this offense. Not that he doesn't know what he's doing, but just like the feeling you get when a quarterback is comfortable with what he's doing. He always knows where to go with the ball, where like that level of comfort clearly isn't there. And of course, look, it's his first start. But I'm just saying, you don't come out of this game encouraged for the future beyond Aaron Rodgers, you know?
No, I agree.
And there's no reason that couldn't have been the case. It didn't mean it was necessarily indicative of anything, but plenty of quarterbacks have played well in their first start, particularly when they've sat down for an extended period of time and learned on the job. Like, you come in, you have a great game, and everyone's like, maybe life beyond Rodgers won't be so bad. Maybe we will go from Favre to Rodgers to Jordan Love and keep the gravy train going. You certainly didn't come out of this game with that kind of optimism.
That's fair. The Chiefs' defense played a lot better, in part because are you seeing the trend here? The defense is very dependent on who you're playing. L'Jarius Sneed with a huge game, including the interception. He did a really nice job finally in coverage on the outside. He was tight with Devontae and a bunch of stuff outside. So 13-7, man.
Yeah,
a 9-6 game and a 13-7 game this week in the NFL. All right, what else we got here? What did I tweet? Whatever I tweeted out, we're going to do next. Raiders, Giants, Packers, Chiefs. Cardinals, 49ers are next.
Okay.
That's what I tweeted. Cardinals dominated, man. This was so you have no Kyler Murray.
No.
You have no DeAndre Hopkins.
Nope.
No
AJ Green.
No AJ Green, the receiver.
Yes.
Not the corner.
The other AJ Green.
I think we need more fresh names in the NFL. There's a lot of double
repeats.
names. Yeah. AJ Greens and David Longs and Josh Allens.
It's like movies, you know? You run out of movies, and now we're just repeating them all. We're just remaking them all. We run out of player names, so we're just repeating them all now.
We're in like Fast and the Furious 22.
Yeah.
This is what a disappointment for
And that's
the
not
Niners.
even counting like Asante Samuel Jr., you know?
Is this true? Is this a bigger deal that the 49ers get crushed by backups and the great Colt McCoy? Let's not take anything away from Colt McCoy. The 49ers get crushed by backups. Well, the Cardinals move to 8-1 with backups, showing their depth. And Cliff Kingsbury deserves some credit here, man. Who cares if he doesn't move his receivers? Look at this. Make an offense with Colt.
I think it says more. I think it says something about both of them, actually. Look,
good.
the 49ers were moving the ball reasonably well and then kept turning it over. Like 3 turnovers was a big part of this game.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily come – like if they had been able to not turn the ball over, this would have been a shootout, and you would come out of it slightly concerned about this Arizona defense finally sort of realizing the regression that was bound to come at some point. You know, they've been dramatically outperforming the grading so far this year, and you're like, you know, we had some pretty major concerns about the talent level of this group heading into the year, and they've been outperforming it. Will that continue, particularly without guys like J.J. Watt, et cetera, et cetera? So if the 49ers hadn't kept shooting themselves in the foot, you would come out of this game with that kind of somewhere in the discussion, right? But because they did, They put up 17 points, and you're like, it probably doesn't get mentioned that much. Then the other side of this is the 49ers defense is terrible, and consequently they were able to get ripped to pieces by a Colt McCoy-led offense that didn't have DeAndre Hopkins or A.J. Green, and none of it mattered. Like Christian Kirk had a big game. Basically, everybody caught almost everything that was thrown in their direction, which indicates that your defense is not doing a tremendous job of covering anybody. And I think that one is the one that's more like 50-50, right? I think you do give credit to the Cardinals and Colt McCoy and the scheme and all the things they were able to open up. On the other hand, you have to kind of look at that defense from the 49ers and say their starting corners were like Josh Norman and Drake Kirkpatrick, neither of whom, like, they weren't great. It's been a while since Josh Norman has been good, and Drake Kirkpatrick may never have been particularly good. And all of a sudden, like on their, somewhere down the line of their careers, they're both winding up starting in the same defense. Like that's obviously a recipe for problems.
78% of Colt McCoy's yards came after the catch.
Yeah.
78%.
Which is a huge number.
So Colt McCoy is like, you know how you love Jacoby Brissett because you love to see you like to watch the train wreck. What was your
the Wilhelm scream?
Wilhelm scream. You like to watch that. I like watching Colt McCoy because I'm not like rooting for more Alex Smith types around the NFL, the conservative, underneath stuff and everything, which Brissett falls into sometimes. Brissett gets to that stat line, but after the scream, right? In like a weird way, he gets to that stat line.
Well, it's like it's Alex Smith with added Wilhelm scream.
Yeah. But I kind of like watching the Colt McCoy types where it's like the margin of error, he just doesn't have a great arm. He's got to make so many
You like
good
watching
decisions.
a tightrope act.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, oh, don't throw the deep out, Colt. Don't throw it. They're going to pick it.
There's no safety net. There's a guy walking across.
Timing's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be great. And, Colt's got more interceptions and touchdowns in his, limited career and all that stuff. But a game like this, it's like, all right, he didn't make any mistakes. It was just accurate, spread the ball around and the whole thing. I like watching Colt, not every week. But the same way you like watching Brissett.
Nobody wants that every week.
Completely different reasons because it's going to, you're rooting for just like bland, don't screw it up. So Colt managed the game extremely well, did some nice stuff there. But the run game in Arizona too, like every time you look up, massive hole, creating big plays, whether it's James Conner, Benjamin, they move the ball. 3 touchdowns, 163 yards on the ground. Colt didn't miss many throws. Just, very good offense by Arizona. And doing it without their top guys. I'm impressed by that. I think the 49ers' depth, to your point on defense, just catching up to them. Javon Kinlaw's been out for whatever that's worth. I mean, they're just missing people.
Yeah, I mean, the Kinlaw thing is, I don't know how much that's his absence is hurting versus the fact that he hasn't worked out anyway is problematic. Like, that's the perfect example. So the Vikings trade away Stephon Diggs and replace him with Justin Jefferson, which is risky because the chances that Justin Jefferson will be as good as Stephon Diggs are pretty small, and yet they nailed it, right? If they possibly upgraded there, at the very minimum, it's a lateral move, and they got cheaper. The 49ers essentially tried the same trick. They trade away DeForest Buckner and draft Javon Kinlaw to replace him, and that is an example of how that can go completely in the other direction. You take the thing that you got for that player and you use it to replace him, and that guy might not be anything like the same level of impact player. And that's what the 49ers are realizing right now. Even if Javon Kinlaw is playing, he just isn't in the same world yet and may never be as DeForest Buckner. So all of a sudden you have this glaring hole in the middle of your defense where once there was strength.
We mentioned last week, Jimmy Garoppolo played really well last week. He was fine again, I think, in this game. He was fine. But, and so Kyle Shanahan's won about 70% of his games with Jimmy Garoppolo as the starter.
Yeah.
With the C.J. Beathard, as great as C.J. Beathard is. Nick Mullins of the world, not even close, right? But the Niners are 3-5. We know Trey Lance is the future at some point. Are we moving to Trey Lance? Or, and the other question, like, what does this mean for Shanahan here? I mean, they're also down 3 scores. They could have gone for 2 to get it to 2 scores to be down 16. They didn't do it, so they stayed down 3 scores, and they're trying to map this comeback late in the game, and they were just running out of time and possessions. And it's like, man, as great as Shanahan is as an offensive mind, some of the game management stuff is not great.
Yeah. I don't think his game management stuff is good. And I think that Kyle Shanahan would benefit massively if he embraced
PFF IQ. Just sign up for PFF IQ. Oh, sorry.
Sure. Or, the trend of now having somebody in his ear whose job it is to do that stuff, right? And essentially take those decisions out of his hands, or at the very minimum, like have a guy who says, this is the clear answer, come up with a good reason to not do this, as opposed to just go by your gut during the flow, right? I think he would benefit hugely from that. I think he's going to start to take a lot of heat right now, and I think most of it is undue.
Really?
Yeah. So if Jimmy Garoppolo plays the way he has the last 2 weeks, the 49ers offense will be very good and be fine, and they'll win quite a lot of games. He hasn't for most of this year. And B, so if you look at Kyle Shanahan's history with the 49ers, the guy has almost never had a viable quarterback yet. He's had a few games here and there of Jimmy G playing at the level he plays at when he's playing viably. And when he does that, they win games and go to the Super Bowl. He hasn't done that for most of this year. He's done it the last couple of weeks. And if that doesn't happen, or if Trey Lance doesn't come in and play at that kind of level, he's just working without a quarterback that can execute. And even without that, he's got Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard and crappy Jimmy G all racking up like 7+ yards per attempt. Like, the stuff they do with that group of quarterbacks is pretty miraculous. Right now, the problem is that the defense is horrendous. And that's not Kyle Shanahan's area. Like, that's somebody else. That's the ingredients he's being given there, not holding up. Now, when Robert Saleh was the coordinator, he was able to make that group look better than it was. And maybe this is a case of this has been heading in that direction for a while, and they haven't really done a great job of seeing it coming and heading it off. But like, if you're looking at the 49ers now and asking, what are their problems, and rank them in hierarchical order, how high would Kyle Shanahan be on that list for you? At minimum, like the highest I would go is like number 4, and that would be his in-game management stuff.
Interesting. So, yeah, the defense, I mean, they're giving up 25 points per game. Same amount of points per game as the Chiefs as a team. So they're in that, like we talk about the Chiefs' defense as the thing holding it back. And yes, the Chiefs' defense gets a little boost from giving up 7 yesterday against the Packers. But I agree that's probably the bigger issue with the Niners. I also think at a high level, even though they're 3-5, when you look at the Niners and what you can judge coaches by wins. Maybe you don't want to do that with quarterbacks. You can do it with coaches. Shanahan winning 70% of his games with Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is an encouraging sign that he can do it going forward. I do think he's got to improve the game management stuff, though.
Yeah.
Big week for the Cardinals, man. Everybody else that is competing with them for the number 1 seed either lost or is sitting at home like the Bucs. So Cardinals now controlling their own destiny. Here we are. Control your own destiny territory as they've got the number 1 seed.
Control your own destiny territory. We're about to be in the hunt territory. We're getting all the playoff buzzwords.
A lot of in the hunt stuff. My favorite is week 17 when we just read the list of playoff scenarios. Week 18 now.
Yeah.
All the playoff scenarios. If these 19 things happen, this team is getting in. It's going to happen. We got 2 more games to discuss. The Clippers. Los Angeles Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
The Chargers. Chargers 27, the Eagles 24. A good little back-and-forth battle here. Brandon Staley continues to go for every single 4th down. Sometimes it worked. It started off a little slow in this game, but they kept going for it. Late in the game, they had, was it 4th and 1 that they went for again? And they get it. And let's talk about that decision in a second. I thought the Eagles did a really nice job staying in this game. This was the Eagles' offense that we had looked at before. We've talked about, like, they ran the ball 39 times for 176. They dropped back under 20 times. This is like what we expected from the Eagles coming into the season, and it kind of worked.
And I think they've lucked into it. Like the game against the Lions, I think, like, they stumbled into this idea of, hey, you know what? When our offensive line just gets to run block and we just hand the ball off to whoever the hell we want, and Jalen Hurts gets to do his thing at the back of that, we're way better than like just saying, hey, Jalen, go win the game on your own. Let us know how it worked out.
Let us know.
They stumble into that against the Lions, and then the Chargers have the kind of defense where you can do that as well, and it works. Like, that should be their offense.
And Hurts made some big throws. Devontae Smith was fantastic. He catches 5 for 116, including a really nice touchdown on a dig route. So Devontae was fantastic. But it comes down to the Chargers. I used this stat yesterday, and it's just one way to paint this picture. Like, the Eagles are giving up 75% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks this year. It is absurd what they're giving up. AFC West quarterbacks remember 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever, Derek Carr went 31 for 34.
They're already tied for the all-time record of games in a season in which the opposing quarterback has completed 80% of his passes. They've done it 5 times this year, which is tied for the most ever in a season. It's also, I think, was it ESPN Stats and Info or something had this stat that, like, from like 1980 to, I don't know, sometime recently.
Well after the merger, huh? In 1980.
Well after the merger. I don't even remember the years, but like over like a 30-year period, the Eagles defense did it 6 times, and they've done it 5 times this year.
It is nuts. Just Herbert.
It's the most vanilla defense in the NFL. Like, they do a complete and total lack of anything interesting, complicated, disguising, like trickery, nothing. They just line up and say, here's what we're running, beat it.
Bend but don't break on steroids. Because Herbert had another like 4-yard, 4.5 average depth of target, but he goes 32 for 38. Carr went 31 for 34. Mahomes went 24 for 30. Those 3 AFC West quarterbacks have a completion percentage of like 87, 88% against them this year. Anyway, they're still not like the worst pass defense in the NFL, because giving up completions is different from EPA and points and all that stuff. But they're still not great. But I feel like they have to adjust a little bit, right?
They're like, so the Chargers do this thing where they invite you to run the ball, but they're right on that borderline of when it becomes efficient enough that it's no longer a good
problematic
plan. Yeah. Like, in general, you want a team to run the ball on you because it's less efficient if they do that than if they pass the ball. But at some point, you're so bad against the run that it becomes more efficient to run the ball, and it's no longer a net win if you can convince the opposition to just run it all day long. The Chargers are always like right on that borderline, and sometimes they stray too far, and the plan to invite the run is actually detrimental to what they're doing on defense, and sometimes they're the other side of the line. The Eagles are the same thing, but in the pass game. It's like you invite the opposition to just be patient and complete a whole bunch of high percentage, low impact plays in the pass game, and just do that 15 times. And if you do that 15 times, you'll march the ball down the field and you'll score. They invite teams to do that as a plan, but they're just on that line of like when it's too freaking easy. And teams do that, and they'll just complete 85% of their passes, and they'll march all the way down the field, and it won't do you any good. They need to do something to mix it up, particularly like, things like stunts, right? The stunt doesn't affect the threat of a big play on the back end, really. I mean, sure, you need to pay a little bit more attention to gap discipline up front and make sure that you don't just cave in one side of the line and let the quarterback like run off into 20 yards of unmarked space. So that it's not 100% without cost or at least things you need to think about. But generally, it doesn't affect your propensity for giving up a big passing play on the back end. So what I'm saying is, instead of being like the lowest team in the NFL in percentage of using stunts up front, you could add those with almost no downside whatsoever.
It doesn't change the coverage shift.
Right.
It doesn't change what you want to do.
You can still take away the deep threat and keep everything in front of you, but increase your chance of getting pressure on the play just by adding a bunch of those in. And yet you're not. Why?
Yeah, I don't know. Get better pressure. Fourth down, Chargers got 40% of their fourth downs. It was another game where they got stuffed a few times and didn't let that discourage them. That's what I think I appreciate about Brandon Staley. Right or wrong, say what you want about the numbers and whatever. Brandon Staley is not letting what's happened previously affect his I'm going to go with what the numbers say.
I think it helped that they were massively efficient on third downs.
Yes. I'm just saying, like, they got stuffed at the goal line early. They got stuffed on other 4th and 1s.
Yeah.
That generally thinks, wow, now it's not working for us today. Let's go the other way.
They drove 98 yards and didn't score.
That's incredible. That has to be a record, right?
I don't know. Yeah, but
John Elway would have scored on
I think
98 yards.
that all the things that scare coaches away from those things in game, like, oh, it's not working out today, we better stop doing this. I think if you were also struggling badly on third down, you might be of that opinion. But if you're doing well on third down and, okay, the fourth down thing hasn't gone your way, at least you can say, look, when we generally in gotta-have-it situations, we're doing pretty well today. It's just the fourth down thing hasn't gone our way. So I think that probably played into it, that, yeah, they might have gone away from those a bit more if they were also struggling on third. But on third down, like, they were 6 of 7 for 70 yards and a touchdown in the passing game. So I think they had confidence built in that whatever the small sample size of fourth downs were going to be fine.
So then the final thing, right? It's 24-24. Great back and forth game. The Chargers are in field goal range. Nice drive. They're facing a 4th and 1. They're definitely in field goal range. And it's just after the 2-minute warning, right? I mean, there's a lot of time left. So the two scenarios are you kick the 4th and 1 field goal, and then the Eagles have plenty of time to come back and match it, right? And I think traditionally that's a kick. Most teams, that's a kick. It wasn't like a 47 or 48 yard. I mean, it was closer. I could pull up the exact scenario, but they go for it, get a big run, get a much easier field goal opportunity, but also run the entire clock out. So that's the reasoning for going for it, and I think that's a big part of why the Chargers won, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they make that decision. If you don't get it, you're still tied. The Eagles have that same opportunity to go kick the field goal, except they can win it. But when you do get it at 4th and 1, you pretty much ends the game. Your win probability goes through the roof because you keep the ball away from the Eagles and you have an easier field goal opportunity.
1:45 on the clock. They were at the Philly 28. So, yeah, for pretty much every other team in the NFL, that's just a kick.
It's a 45-yard field goal. You feel good about that your kicker's going to hit it.
It's a good point. Like, you're very rarely going to see a team go for a 4th down specifically for time, right?
Right.
And not just so if you need to run out the clock to kill the game, sure, but time versus points, like that's the sort of watershed moment here. You're very, very rarely going to see a team go for the 4th down when the choice is time on the clock versus points on the board. You'll see teams go for it where it's time off the clock versus, essentially maintain possession versus kick it away. That's one thing. But going for it versus take the points, which will put you ahead, is huge. Like, it's a genuine, like a really important analytic sort of game decision. What's the word I'm looking for?
Game management.
Game management, game
theory.
Yeah, game theory type of decision. Like, that's a big one.
Yeah. So I think we've talked a lot about 4th down decisions in general here, but I think that's the part of it. Like, when you have an algorithm, so to speak, actually working on this stuff, it's taking in all those factors. And I think the human brain tends to think tie game, add 3,
right,
we'll be winning by 3.
Yeah.
Right? You only seem to think, and this is, again, when the coaches are like, let's feel and gut and stuff like that, it's like, man, you're missing so many other variables that can be accounted for earlier in the week. You don't have to calculate these things on Sunday. You go in with this information. When I have this time left, and this is the score, and this is the opportunity, and it's 4th and 1, here are the odds. Here's what it looks like. So, it looked like some of the 4th down variance was catching up to the Chargers for a while, but they stuck with it, and I think it ended up sealing the deal for them.
Even just to put you in the sort of quote-unquote correct starting point, right? So instead of you get to this situation and all of a sudden you have to run this like thing in your head of like, oh, what are all the variables? How do we do this? What are we going for? What's the positive? What's the negative? All of that on the fly. You have a guy in your ear saying, this is what the data says to do. Now you essentially, instead of trying to work out where the right thing is, you're being told what the right thing is, and all you have to do is add whatever you think is relevant in terms of feel and decide if that's enough to override it or not. And maybe you decide yes, maybe you decide no. You can have a whole conversation about whether you should be doing that at all or whether you should just be taking the number and going with it. But the point is, the starting point of like, here is the answer now tell me why it's wrong, is way different to, in the next 20 seconds, run all of the data yourself in your brain and come up with the answer. Because I think if you do that, you're going to like automatically run back to what you know, which is usually like the conservative way of doing it, and just take the points.
Even the most archaic coaches aren't really doing that, right? Like they're at least anticipating, hey, if we get a fourth down, I know what I'm going to do.
I mean, yeah, like they're running it, but it's still like in the next minute, in the next 90 seconds while you're doing 7 other things, figure out what you're going to be doing in this fourth down situation.
All I'm saying is even the most forward-thinking coaches, I think, get caught up in the moment. Like if it's 3rd and 8 and you pick up 7 to get to 4th and 1, which is instead of like it's 3rd and 1 and you lose a yard to move to 4th and 2, like all of that stuff I think influences coaches. And I look at Staley not letting that stuff affect him. Right? He just continues to push on. And I think over time, it's going to be good. We mentioned the Ravens game where it was bad. It did not work out in the Ravens game, and it looked like you got crushed in the Ravens game, even more than you should have. But I think it worked out. Obviously, it worked out in this one. I credit the Eagles. They're still playing tough here, but they moved to 3-6. Chargers 5-3, tied with the Raiders atop the AFC West. Somebody did mention, and I forgot to mention this, Packers fan chimed in on Twitter and said, you got to talk about the Packers defense. And I did want to. I want to credit the Packers defense. It does feel like, as painful as the Chiefs offense is right now with all the underneath stuff that they've been throwing, Packers tackling was fantastic.
Yeah.
Chris Barnes with a great tackle, and Oren Burks finally broke out 7 years after I expected him to with a great tackle. He's ready. He's ready to break out.
Can't claim that now.
Oren Burks. I don't want to claim it. The guy, doesn't grade very well, but Oren Burks made a great tackle. I feel like I'm seeing more of that around the NFL. Could just be in my head. A lot of really good open field tackles on underneath stuff. But the Packers tackling, I think, kept them in the game and held the Chiefs to 13 points, which is still good job, Packers.
Yeah, and they did it with Kevin King being like an important part of the defense, because all of a sudden they lose Eric Stokes.
So there was a play early in the game. This is football, right? Like when you just write down on paper Tyreek Hill versus Kevin King, it looks like it might be the biggest mismatch among starters in the NFL.
Not just like their starting corners were Kevin King and Rasul Douglas.
Yeah,
like that's just as problematic as San Francisco's Josh Norman and Drake Kirkpatrick.
The point I wanted to make was that like even mismatches, like sometimes Kevin King wins the battle or whatever. There was a pass early on where they threw it to Tyreek in the flat. And this is another thing about the Chiefs offense I'm wondering. Are teams just getting better at understanding Tyreek, changing your angle for how you tackle Tyreek Hill? Like the old way this would have worked is Kevin King would have ran right at him and Tyreek would have said, I'm faster than you, and just ran right by him, right? King kind of slow played it and kind of just mirrored him a little bit, and then his help came, and they bottled up Tyreek Hill. So all this underneath stuff that he's catching, again, he's averaging under 10 yards per catch like each of the last 3 games. Our team's just doing a better job of how the angles they're taking, not overcommitting, letting their defense swarm to him. This is all of the stuff I think defenses are doing a better job of adjusting against the Chiefs, and I thought the Packers did a really good job of that yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that like 3-4 years into this, teams wouldn't be getting incrementally better at how you defend that. Like it doesn't mean they'll ever figure it out, but I suspect that if all else was well, you probably wouldn't even notice it. But sure, teams are going to be getting better piece by piece at how to stop each one of the individual elements of the Kansas City offense, because it's now been so long that they've been dealing with it. It's like, Randy Moss 4 years into his career wasn't winning in quite the same way as Randy Moss was as rookie, where he was like, we've never seen this before. What the hell do we do with this? Later in his career, it was different. It was still really effective, and in fact, as effective, but teams understood how to cope with it better.
All right, last game to wrap it up. The Tennessee Titans, 7-2, baby. Owning the AFC right now. The Titans, they beat the Rams pretty handily. Rams moved to 7-2, so they're both 7-2 now. But the Titans, it felt like they dominated this game when it was really Matthew Stafford.
Well, they did dominate this game because of Matthew Stafford.
They did. But it wasn't like the Titans moved the ball offensively or whatever. They had under 200 yards of total offense. But
right,
Matthew Stafford,
who went full Wentz.
Yeah. He had the interception while getting whooped to the ground. slung to the ground. He throws it up for an interception. Could have been a pick six. Gets it to like the 4-yard line, and then next play throws an actual pick six. If you take those two plays out, though, the Rams are right in this thing. So the Rams defense played really well. Was fine. I mean, they were putting a bind. They didn't give up 28 points. It was really Stafford, 3 turnover-worthy plays, but those 2 that were really the egregious ones, both of them caught, obviously, and the biggest factor in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I don't remember seeing that exact type of play for a long, long time, and then 2 of them come along like back-to-back weeks almost. Back-to-back, exactly, right?
That's
back-to-back
like when
weeks.
you're getting tackled in the end zone. And you
right, it's like safety or quick, do anything possible to avoid the safety, throw it blindly.
Donald Hollis had one back in '98 for the Raiders.
Wow. Against who?
Bengals, maybe? I don't know. High-pitched voice means I don't really know.
Right. I thought the only reason you were going to
But
know
all
that.
I remember is a guy named Donald Hollis played quarterback for the Raiders and had a 6-interception game, and I'm pretty sure he threw a pick like in the end zone, like to another human who was standing in the end zone.
In end zone to end zone pick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
I thought the only reason you were going to know
that
that
out.
is because it happened against the Jags.
No, I know other late 90s stuff that happened besides just the Jaguars. I'm just like intimately familiar with
Dialed in with the Jags?
With the Jags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had this yet this year, which is the inevitable couple of games a year where Matthew Stafford plays terribly, which have always happened in his Detroit Lions career. We hadn't had that at all this season. And, almost every quarterback has these. I mean, remember last year, like a whole bunch of quarterbacks were grading above 90, and every single one of them, except Deshaun Watson, I think, had at least one awful game in there. Right, Tom Brady had a terrible one against the Saints. Aaron Rodgers had a terrible one against the Bucs. Like every single one of those great quarterbacks had one disastrous game in there somewhere along the line. So this might just be that. This might be the one stinking game that Matthew Stafford has this year in an otherwise near flawless MVP campaign.
The other thing that happened, and you know me and my my anti-EPA for QBs stance here. EPA is a team stat, not a QB one. There was a lot of Stafford EPA getting thrown around the interwebs this week. He's got the EPA, and I was like, that's kind of a team-driven. It's a team-driven stat, especially when his PFF grade isn't great. All of that stuff reverted back because Stafford, when you do get your premium stats and you check it out, he'll have 3 big-time throws in there. 3. Guess what he did on those? He should have more. Guess what he did on those 3 big-time throws? He might have more.
What did he do?
Didn't complete one.
Oh.
And I think they were all in the end zone. So every time he made a good throw in the end zone, you've got his receiver running out of bounds or just not keeping his feet in bounds. That happened a couple times. So that actually reverted back as well. Like Stafford did make some really good throws that didn't show up in the stat sheet. And when he made the terrible ones, they were bad. They were interceptions. He got away with one other turnover-worthy play. But yeah, that was – plus he got sacked 5 times. So that was the other thing he was doing a really good job of. He was not getting sacked, whether he was under pressure. They weren't converting to sacks. Overall sack rate was really low. He got sacked 5 times. Jeffrey Simmons dominant up front in that first half. I just can't say enough about what the Tennessee Titans are doing defensively.
Their success on defense yesterday, given the personnel that they had, was ridiculous. Like, there's no way it should have been that. It should have been possible. This is the best offense in the NFL heading into that game. And they were able to shut it down with like no corners.
That's what I'm. So every single week we're like, okay, the Titans can't keep this up, right? What's the order now? They beat the Bills on Monday Night Football,
The
then
Bills,
the Chiefs,
then the Chiefs,
then the Colts in overtime,
then the Rams,
then the Rams.
3 of
They induced the Wentz thing too. That's the other. They induced the Wentz and Stafford end zone play.
3 of the best teams in the NFL and a team within their division that effectively sealed the division for them. Like, those are 4 of the highest leverage games you're going to find a team playing. And not only did they win them all, they did it back to back to back. And not one of those games was like a letdown after the previous emotional high. And also, by the way, there's some serious like cross-country trips involved there. Like, this was in SoFi.
Yeah. Like this. You were wrong. You said they had no shot.
I did. I didn't think they had a prayer in this game.
I think I took the Rams too. I didn't think this would happen.
And they absolutely did.
I've been impressed with the Titans in part because if we're going to talk about all these other teams that are dealing with injuries and all that, the Niners are all beat up, whatever. The Titans are finding a way to make this thing work. And by the way, Kevin Byard, another interception. He had the pick six.
Great play.
I think he said after he wasn't supposed to be there or he was late, whatever it was. He
did
dropped
look
down.
like he was fairly well freelancing that.
He just dropped down to the curl flat area and robbed the.
It looked like he was. It looked like he was the robber in the defense, and then just decided that this is going out to the flat. I can get there.
Maybe they should run that defense more. You know what the defense was? It might have been the defense I was going to run as Bengals defensive coordinator.
Cover the hot areas.
Yeah. So what he did is he saw the Rams. He read the tendencies, and he said, in this down and distance, they're going to throw it here. You just read the heat map. And he covered the heat map. He said, we're not running coverages, we're covering the heat map. And Byard heat mapped it into the end zone.
Can I read you some stats that are a little bit funny?
Yes.
Look, the Titans' defensive line did a great job. And in particular, Jeffrey Simmons was a beast. He had 9 total pressures, led the team, monster. Harold Landry, 5 total pressures.
Oh, I know where we're
really
going.
good.
I know where we're going with this.
Denico Autry, 6 total pressures, really good. Bud Dupree, 1 pressure, which was unblocked and the quarterback fell over at the time. Bud Dupree could have spent the next 7 years of his life rushing against Andrew Whitworth and never beat him. Like, he could still be out there. Like, just endless, you know, that the Hard Knocks scene where J.J. Watt's out at 4 a.m. under floodlights just rushing against air. Bud Dupree could be out there just rushing all night against Whitworth and never pressured the quarterback. I just wanted to put that out there.
You don't need to pick on Bud. They won. It's a victory Monday.
They did.
You don't
they
need
won.
to pick on Bud.
It was just kind of funny, you know?
The pressure that he did have, it came on 4th and 1. But it's clutch. Came on 4th and 1.
Clutch.
It is the second time, I think it was against the Lions, that the Rams did the same thing. They ran boot action on 4th and 1. And a couple weeks ago, Stafford missed the throw. Kind of helped keep the Lions in the game. And then in this one, he stumbles out of it and then kind of misses the throw. Either way, the throw is incomplete. But it was a kind of a risky 4th and 1 call. Again, booting him out to the left, and hasn't worked out for the Rams.
No, it's just kind of funny to me.
No, I was trying to pull it back into what affected the game and all that stuff, and you just want to make fun of Bud. It's cool.
I mean, there was a couple of plays where like the entire defensive line is converging around Matthew Stafford, except for Bud, who's 6 yards past the pocket, getting driven there by Whitworth. It's just, you know, big free agent acquisition. Here's the guy that's going to solve the pass rushing problem, and you know,
it's just not the day. Wait till the Titans lost when you can blame them. It's not time.
It is though. It's time when you see just how funny it was. Like when you just watch what was happening. You know, like everybody else is wrecking the Rams' offensive line, which, by the way, has been like one of the best units in the NFL this year. Coming into that game, they'd given up like 56 pressures as a unit.
Yeah, they'd been so good
the entire year. The Titans' defensive front just wrecked them, except Bud. Bud didn't.
Yeah.
No wrecking.
The point I tried to make earlier in the week was that Stafford's negatively graded throws have remained pretty stable. And I tweeted this picture out. For quarterback play, the thing we found is negatives remain fairly stable. Positives can fluctuate a little bit. Positives are very much dependent on your teammates and all that fun stuff, guys getting open or whatever. And that had been the difference in Stafford and in the Rams offense. So those negatives kind of came back to bite. He's still missing some throws. He missed a few others in this game besides the turnover-worthy plays. That was the difference in this game. Adrian Peterson got to see some time, 10 carries for 21 yards. He lowered his pads for a touchdown. He did get in there late. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, the Titans weren't even all that good offensively. Tannehill threw a pick. He was another one, left that out route inside on Jalen Ramsey, who said he was going to get one. That was just how many times did that happen this week?
Called it.
Jalen Ramsey did. He said he's going to do that. He said Tannehill leaves him inside and he's going to jump it.
The Rams, like their offense going as the offensive line goes, has been the most insanely tight correlation over the last 5 years. They literally, when their offensive line.
Go ahead and recap it. Do you want me to recap it?
Sure.
I mean, do you want to go before McVay got there?
You can go all the way back, yeah.
I mean, 2016 when Jeff Fisher was still there, it was as bad as it gets.
Yep.
Todd Gurley averaged 3.3 per carry.
Yep.
And Goff couldn't do anything. 17, all of a sudden they're good. That's when McVay shows up. 17, they're really good. 18, they're really good. They go to the Super Bowl. Goff's good. For whatever reason, in
MVP candidate Todd Gurley.
MVP candidate Todd Gurley. Goff goes to the Super Bowl. 2019, the Rams' offensive line ranks 30th in our
weird,
rankings.
Complete collapse from everybody.
Rob Havenstein's hurt and just not playing well. He went from good every year to terrible. Goff has his worst season in 2019, and then last year they were a little bit. They were better, and then it was like the one time when Goff's production didn't really match what the offensive line had been doing. And then this game, you have coming into it, as you said, as good as it gets as far as pass pro goes for the Rams. They fall apart last night, as did the entire offense. So there you go. It's the Rams' offensive line history.
Yeah, and it's weird because Stafford didn't play particularly well in this game. On the other hand, it's like the first time that his offensive line has been overmatched and has been beaten up a bit. And you're like, well, all right, what do you take from that? Is that an indication of what Stafford is going to do for the second half of the year, or is that an indication that when the offensive line isn't great, the whole thing doesn't look as great, and MVP Stafford isn't MVP Stafford, and Sean McVay isn't the genius again? Like, it's just an interesting dynamic that we haven't seen that much from the Rams because their offensive line has been so good.
What do you make? What do you make of this going forward for the Rams here? Concerning, minor blip, inevitable regression, all of the above?
I don't think it's all of the above. So I just ran the numbers, by the way, for the offensive line grades in that sequence. 2018, 82.
Good job, Ultimate.
2019, 53.
53?
Yeah, which is terrible. And it was worse as a run blocking unit, hence MVP Todd Gurley falling off a cliff. It was 48. 2020, 78, and this year it's been 77.6, even including that game. So it's literally like smooth sailing as one of the best offensive lines in the league, except that one really terrible down year where everything fell apart for randomly no reason.
There's another one where the Titans said, well, we knew we wanted to get pressure up the middle. So what did they just tell Jeffrey Simmons? Go dominate?
Seems to have worked.
That was it. And sometimes, if you're going to run stunts, you want to create the pressure through the interior. That was, we actually had a team reach out to us a couple of years ago to help game plan for a certain quarterback. They said, are we better off pressuring him from the interior or the edge? We ran a bit of a study, and they said interior. And it's like you can kind of like run your games to make sure that the looper's coming in up the middle. Did feel like the Titans were doing some of that, and obviously, when you just win your one-on-ones, it happens. So good job by Simmons. Good job by the Titans. I am impressed with what they're doing defensively.
Yeah.
Just what they're doing with the personnel and the injuries and youth and all that stuff.
It is crazy. It's a fascinating sort of data point in this whole Rams thing this year because I'm perfectly happy still owning the idea that I got this wrong predicting what this Rams offense would look like this season. I didn't think that Jared Goff or that Matthew Stafford was a big enough upgrade from Jared Goff that it would be transformative for this offense. And the fact, and that's based off the fact that when you break down Stafford's game throw by throw, it isn't as good as a lot of these other quarterbacks. And even this year, he's he was number one in the MVP odds all throughout this week. His number one in a whole bunch of different statistics, but was 15 or something in the PFF grades. He's nowhere near the top versus the other guys. He's still missing a bunch of throws. There's a ton of negatives in there as well, and it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is because of the way, the things that he opens up in this offense allows McVay to run the full spectrum again, not just what he was stuck with Jared Goff at quarterback. And that does have a transformative effect. So all of a sudden we get this game, and there's the first blip. Now, was that just a bad game? The Titans defense did a great job. They dominated up front, and when that happens, everything falls apart for almost every offense in the NFL. Or is this a case of this is the first game of a story we've seen countless times before? We've seen a lot of times the narrative of this guy has unlocked Matthew Stafford. Jim Bob Cooter has fixed Matthew Stafford. And you get 8 games, and then it goes back to being Matthew Stafford. The gloss falls off, and all of a sudden it's, Jim Bob Cooter isn't Bill Walsh. We now need to go in a different direction. Now, I have no idea. I literally have no clue. Maybe this is the start of the Matthew Stafford that we see every single year. Or maybe this was just a bad game against a really good Titans defense.
Yeah.
And not even a really good Titans defense this week.
They played a really good game.
Yeah.
And they've been putting it together the last few weeks. I don't know if it's a blueprint game necessarily, but it's a different McVay offense. We had the couple years ago where McVay's offense got adjusted to, so have teams found something they're going to do against this version, the Stafford version, and now ball's in the Rams' court. How are they going to adjust? So, anyway, Another crisp 2.5
2.5 hour show. Yeah.
I think we've hit our stride. We're the Vikings, right?
I mean,
no matter whatever happens this week, no matter how many, they could have a week of 4 games, like in the playoffs, and we're going to go 2.5 hours.
There's no fat to be trimmed on this podcast. I mean, this is tight. Nails everything. There's no extra space. There's no fluff. There's nothing we could cut out of this to get it under 2.5 hours.
No, everything was necessary. I talked about how Mac Jones needs to learn the figure 4.
Right.
I usually forget most of what I said. I have no idea, but it was all great. Great.
I mean, you've been trying to get that in for a while. We finally had the opportunity.
Mac Jones just needs a little Ric Flair in him. Woo! You just got to get the woo on there too. I'll do my Michael Buffer later. Anyway, let's go.
You can't do that. You get sued.
That's true.
Michael Buffer will sue the crap out of you if you break that out on the air.
How much is he making just to say, let's get ready to rumble? Can I even say what he says? Am I allowed?
No, God, no.
Let's get ready to
do that thing.
Yeah.
There was an article somewhere that said he's making 6 figures every time he says that out loud.
6 figures?
Yeah.
I would have said like 50.
And he's already said it twice for the Rams this year.
I've always said you need a good catchphrase. You need a good catchphrase.
That dude has made millions trademark. In fact, both of them have, Bruce and Michael.
You know what your trademark could be?
What's that?
When and if Joe Flacco plays football again.
Yeah.
And he's on the road.
That's way too specific to make me money.
I know. But he's on the road. It's a road game.
Yeah.
And you sell, you're Joe Flacco.
No,
so every time he takes a sack in the pocket or something.
The reason that Michael Buffer has made untold millions from his thing is you can apply that to every game and every sporting event ever. Yeah. Right? It's been very good for boxing, but you can also drag him out there for a football game and throw him out there and make him say it while they're kicking off in the background. Like, it works, right? I need a thing that's like applicable across all occasions.
You and I are both astute business folks here.
Of course, yeah.
What's the ROI on having a guy say 5 words? 5 words.
I mean, to me, it's terrible, but evidently richer people disagree.
What does that bring revenue? There's no way.
Particularly not while they're doing, like,
no offense to, I want Michael to earn an honest wage.
There's literally 22 people playing a game in the background while he's doing it this time. At least week 1, they had the decency to wait until he'd done it before they started the game. This week, he's literally like mid-flow, and there's 11 people running downfield.
Just burn the 6 figures. Does it make the crowd more hyped up for the game? Are you going to get better? I mean, the Rams lost.
Look, everybody loves that catchphrase.
I love it too.
When he breaks it out, there's people going to get hyped.
Let's wrap it up. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you Wednesday.
We'll take suggestions, though, for a catchphrase that will make us millions.
Yeah, get us a catchphrase that's going to make us millions.
Email us at NFLpodcast@pff.com.
And go get your promo code, NFLPod. 25% off. NFL Pod.
Look, there it is.
There it is. Look. If you're listening, you got to go click the YouTube so you can read the
Or
promo.
Just listen to the fact that it's NFL Pod.
NFL Pod, 25% off. Join us. Join the fun. All right, we're out of here.